This day was not one of the most pleasant for a young guy who has one dream. This is not the first time that he has been pestered by ignoramuses who have cornered him in a quiet corner and humiliated him. This time the bald man and his friend were the leaders in this quarrel and mocked him for standing there and trembling all over with fear. The boy tried to smile in a friendly manner and asked Snake to give him a little more time to collect the required amount of money. However, he only heartlessly put out his cigarette on him and reminded him that he had asked him about this a week ago. He is amazed at how brave he is, since he managed to not pay them back on time. Suddenly, his green-eyed friend interrupted their conversation and said that he had spent all his savings on buying a new modern phone. Such unexpected news made them all laugh. Parnisha doesn't know how to set priorities. And besides, one of them knew that this expensive purchase was for a girl. And besides, after entering university, she was able to run away with this phone, which made the bullies laugh even more. They came closer to our hero and began to laugh loudly. But he just lowered his head and almost cried. We are talking about Song Jiajia, a student who was able to enter Haiban Genetics University. And everyone knows perfectly well that whoever gets here becomes a warrior, because only the best come here. In the Gregorian era, the spiritual energy was revived. The seal of Kunlun fell, but united with the earth. And that is why many animals became intelligent. In addition, ancient beasts and creatures appeared in the human world, starting with beasts and technologies, and both barely survived it. Humans were only able to survive because of the warrior god, who was able to defeat many of these creatures. In addition, at this time, scientists were solving a genetic puzzle that would help them overcome the limits of the human body. Everyone knows perfectly well that they occupy a high place in society, have fame, wealth, and power. And of course, not everyone can become a warrior. Only one person out of 100 can have the right genes for this. And then, a long-haired guy who is also among the bandits approached his friend and asked if this guy had sent an application to this university. It seems he knows that he still dreams of becoming a warrior. But all three of his attempts to get there were rejected. The bullies came closer to him, taking iron bars in their hands and laughing loudly. Suddenly, one of them was distracted by someone's steps and noticed a familiar face. Our hero also turned his head and looked in that direction. In front of him stood Jiajia, walking hand in hand with some guy and giggling sweetly. The boy looked at her. He had had a crush on her for a long time and was surprised by her appearance here. The blonde looked away in displeasure, and when she saw our hero, the smile fell from her face. Her boyfriend looked at her and asked who it was, if it was her friend. The bandits continued to look at them, fiddling with their weapons in their hands. Jiajia abruptly looked away from him and told her boyfriend that he was indeed a good friend of hers. However, they were not that close. Our hero is very happy to see her. They hadn't seen each other for a month, and he asked how she was doing. His girlfriend moved away from her boyfriend and came closer to him, to the boy sitting on the ground. She knows perfectly well that he is not indifferent to her, and she simply looked into his eyes. Jiajia leaned over him and decided to remind him that they were in different worlds, and therefore, he had no chance. There was no point in hoping for anything more. Hearing this, his heart began to beat even harder, but now not in the most pleasant sense. He had hoped not for a romantic relationship with her, but at least for friendship. The girl just stood and laughed, looking straight into his eyes. She is not at all ashamed of her words. She really considers herself superior to him. She can't believe how far he's sunk to spend time with bandits. Bald wanted to interrupt her and put in his 2 cents, but only her gaze stopped him. The girl crossed her arms over her chest and rolled her eyes in displeasure. She sincerely believed that this pathetic boy was never destined to become a warrior and would never get into the upper class. She would really like this loser to look the truth in the eye and stop dreaming. He should accept his reality. And then, she pulls her hand out of her pocket and throws his phone, which he gave her as a gift for entering university, onto the ground. She didn't need it. The blonde laughed at him along with the other guys, and smiling broadly, turned to her boyfriend. She would like to leave here as soon as possible. And so he took her hand and they moved a little further to the side. Our hero just sighed heavily and picked up the phone that she threw at his feet. One of the bandits came up to him and hit him hard on the head, laughing loudly. He found it funny that he fell in love with this long-haired beauty and was hoping for something. The bald man and his friend took an iron bar and came closer to him, asking how he was going to pay them now. But the brunette doesn't understand why he literally keeps him on a chain, because he has already paid them several times. The brown-eyed man leaned over him and laughingly said that it was all because he was very easy to rob. Loud laughter rose up around him again, and those piercing glances brought the boy to tears. His friend came up to him and laughingly suggested that they just quickly deal with this piece of trash and forget about it. But then, unexpectedly for everyone, our hero deftly kicked the offender in the stomach. The blonde flew back to the nearby wall and lost consciousness from a strong blow to his head. Snake became angry at him, especially after what he did to his comrade, and ordered the others to capture him immediately. Our hero stood up straight and simply began to look around at everyone. This time there was confidence in his eyes. He was not going to back down this time. However, unfortunately, the boy turned out to be weaker than these bandits. And after they beat him, the bald man reminded him that he only had 3 days left to find the money. Our hero simply lay on the ground and somehow tried to catch his breath, staring at the sky. The guys calmly turned away, laughed, and went home. The victim finally came to his senses and regained his strength, still looking at the stars. After some time, the boy was finally able to get to his feet and, staggering a little, tried to cough. He is incredibly angry at these people and promises to take revenge on them all for what they did to him. When the boy finally collected his thoughts, he slowly walked towards his house. Suddenly, unexpectedly, he heard someone's rather familiar voice behind him. It was his friend. The girl happily told him that she had good news for him, and it seemed that Luo was happy to listen to her. She smiled widely and was about to start, but suddenly she stopped. Her gaze fell on his abrasions and other wounds on his body, and from what she saw, tears began to well up in the brunette's eyes. Soon, the girl began to cry and the boy tried to calm her down, convincing her that everything was really okay with him. She was too worried about him. He must be in incredible pain right now. But Luo simply patted his chest and said with a smile on his face that he had simply fallen on his way home, trying to justify the scratches on his body. And it seemed that his girlfriend believed him. She looked him straight in the eyes and carefully wiped her wet eyes with her sleeve. Suddenly, the girl turned around sharply and ran in the opposite direction, asking them to wait for her there. The caring lady brought a small first aid kit with her and soaked a small cotton ball in the solution, gently dabbing his face. A couple of minutes and she did her job. She even had to use a band-aid where there were deeper damages. Suddenly, our hero grabbed her by the nose and jokingly called her a crybaby. His girlfriend constantly cries over every little thing. But Shin stepped aside and, placing her hands at her sides, reminded her that the doctor had told her that crying helps you lose weight, and that it is beneficial. Hearing this, the boy quietly laughed and, tugging her cheek, said that she didn't need this. Of course, after such pleasant words, she became slightly embarrassed and looked away. Tang reminded him of how he fed her fresh bread, all so that she would actually gain weight. Luo laughed slightly and asked what she wanted to tell him. A friend with a wide smile on her face shared that Haiban Genetic University accepted her as a student. Hearing this, our hero could not believe his ears and was very happy for her. But it seems that Jin has a hope in her soul that her friend might also break through there. And then he remembered that he had failed here again. And he knew perfectly well that his girlfriend would be upset. And so he decided in his head not to tell her anything about it. Pretending that everything was fine, Luo told her that the results had not yet been published, and everything would only be known tomorrow. The girl took him by the shoulders and decided to support him. She was sure that her friend would also be on the list. He awkwardly looked away and laughed, not wanting to tell her the truth. After a short but pleasant conversation, he went home, and climbing the steps, our hero was very depressed. He wondered if he would still be able to do this, keep his word. The boy is almost certain that no university will accept a student with such useless genes. As soon as he opened the right door, an unknown man suddenly ran into him. They both fell to the ground, and Luo even screamed out of fear and began to crawl back. The first thing the boy thought was that a thief had unexpectedly wandered in. But the man grabbed him by the leg and asked him not to call the police, otherwise someone would find him here. Our hero looked at him with slight misunderstanding, but did not start to say anything. But he had to pull himself together, and at least turn on the light in the room and close the door. After all the manipulations he had done, he approached this strange man and lifted his head, wondering who he was. The bespectacled man somehow opened his eyes and asked him to listen, citing the fact that he didn't have much time left. And the first thing he asked was if he wanted to become a warrior. The man, without waiting for an answer, put his hand under his robe and pulled out a small packet, saying that this was their latest genetic medicine, which could modify genes and help our hero make his dream come true. However, it is different from the others, because it is made by very ancient genetic medicine, and therefore, the doctor cannot give an answer to what will happen to him if he uses it. The chance of survival is very small. He grabbed Luo by the shoulders and asked him not to let anyone take possession of it, and if his wife didn't want to use this syringe, then just destroy it. Of course, the boy was confused and could not answer anything, when suddenly the body of this unknown man began to ignite. Literally a couple of seconds passed, and the bespectacled man was already covered in fire. And a minute later, his body turned to ashes. The brunette simply watched him and did nothing. The boy was still haunted by this strange package with a syringe, and he looked at it carefully for a long time. After all these unpleasant events, he wanted to go out onto the balcony and breathe some fresh air. Meanwhile, he began to think about this strange drug. All the thoughts in his head were mixed up, and he sighed heavily and turned his gaze to the side. So much had happened that day that he simply looked into the distance and tried to somehow relax. However, thoughts about this did not leave him. If he survives, he will become as noble as the rest, fulfill his greatest dream, and this is his current goal. The brunette went to his room and without thinking twice, decided to inject himself with this drug directly into his arm. When the last drop of it poured into him, his head immediately began to spin. A very strange feeling appeared, as if he was about to fall through the ground. And finally, the boy fell to the ground, exhausted, and lay there for quite a long time. This all lasted until the morning. The sun was already shining outside the window and the birds were singing as they flew over the sea. And only now, after such a long sleep, Luo is slowly beginning to come to his senses. His body was covered in sweat. He was incredibly hot. And finally, he stood up and began to examine himself. First of all, he was glad that he survived. And since this happened, it meant that he managed to achieve his dream. It's a pretty crazy way to achieve his goal, but he's very happy, so he laughs nervously. Suddenly, he was distracted from all these thoughts by the ringing of the alarm clock hanging on the wall. The boy straightened his jacket and was glad that it was still very early. But then, after a couple of seconds, he realizes that he has slept all day. And today they are supposed to post the exam results and conduct the final stage, which is very important for him. The first thing he remembered was his girlfriend. He had already missed a lot of messages from her. And besides, if she finds out the truth, she will go berserk. The boy nervously turns off his phone. He wants to get to school on time, so he runs to his bathroom as quickly as possible. Of course, there is no way to do without a morning routine. Luo diligently brushes her teeth and washes her face. After all this rush, he can finally catch his breath and look at himself. When he looked in the mirror, it was as if he was hooked. Only at this moment does our hero notice that his hair has become silvery as a result of taking the medicine. All the time he spent in the shower, he thought about it. But after he came out confidently, Luo can't believe that his body has changed so much. He feels an incredible surge of strength. The boy is ready. It's time to move out. He goes to the door and slowly pushes it. His look and gait have now become much more confident than they were before. He can't wait for the reaction of those bullies who used to treat him very badly. Soon, our hero arrived at the place, and there were quite a lot of people here today. The boy looked around and was looking for only one person, and it was his girlfriend. She soon appeared to him, with a wide smile on her face. It turned out that Luo was very worried about her. Today she was somehow not herself. She was late for the event. Suddenly, their pleasant conversation is interrupted by that bald snake, who, laughing, again demands money. Our hero's friend came to his defense, stepping forward. This bandit's friend was also with him, and stepping forward, he began to carefully examine the girl. Luo confidently covered her with his body. He would never allow some bullies to harm her. It seemed that Snake didn't like this stubborn behavior, and he frowned deeply and was about to hit him. Our hero's girlfriend, who noticed his behavior, came to his defense. Suddenly, unexpectedly for everyone, a man appears above them, who is in a great hurry straight towards them. This tall, red-haired man stood on a raised platform and looked at everyone present. This guy is the one who will be announcing the results of the exam, and he has warned all the inappropriate people here to leave the area. Otherwise, he will have to take action. All the bullies suddenly stepped back and stared at the red-haired man. The bald man approached our hero and said that he would still stay here until the results were announced. The green-eyed girl stood in front of her friend, confidently determined to protect him, looking intently into the eyes of this inadequate person. To which Luo laughed sweetly and gently touched her hair with his fingers. Of course, she can protect him now, but it won't be for the rest of his life. The brunette smiled, and despite this, said that she would cope with all the tasks set before her. And then, her gaze shifted slightly to the side, and Tang Xin noticed her friend Jiajia. With incredible emotions and joy, she ran to her. Probably the blonde had received a private offer a long time ago. The girls are very happy to meet each other. The green-eyed one took her friend by the hands and admitted that she is jealous of her towards her friend. They are an ideal couple. However, unexpectedly for Xin, Jiajia turned away with a displeased look and coughed. The only thing she could squeeze out of herself was a request not to go to him. because it would be a great shame. The blonde thinks that he is an ordinary person, and her friend should not get involved with him anymore. The first thing that came to Shin's mind after these words was that Luo had most likely offended her in some way. But her guesses turned out to be wrong, Jiajia admitted, without even hiding it, that she had deceived this simpleton. After all, they are different people. Tang tried to dissuade her, citing the fact that the grades had not yet been announced. However, the blonde already knows that they were published, and it was written there in black and white that he failed. She sincerely does not want her friend to be ridiculed because of this. Shin lowered her head and sighed heavily. She remembered very well how this guy stood up for her friend when she was being bullied. She believes that even if Luo is an ordinary person, he cannot be left alone just because of some tables and results. Her friend has changed a lot. From such grief in her, the girl turned away from Jiajia and walked on. But noticing that her friend was leaving, she followed her. Hearing the quiet steps of the traitor, Green-Eyed turned to her and confidently asked her to leave her alone, saying goodbye at the end. Meanwhile, after the end of their not very pleasant dialogue, the red-haired man began to announce the results. Wang Meng was the first to drop out. He failed in literally everything. Soon it was our hero's turn. The man read out his first and last name. The boy clenched his fists and patiently waited for the answer he already knew. Luo Li passed both theory and body tests, but failed in genes, which means he was not accepted. Without wasting any time, the blonde stepped forward and, in front of everyone present, expressed his desire to retake this part of the exam. The whole group of bullies who beat him every day and humiliated him began to laugh loudly on the sidelines. Jiajia and his friend just looked at this crazy guy. If he fails, he will have to pay off the debt of 200,000. Otherwise, he will face prison. The host thought for a minute and then decided to give him a chance to win. After rummaging through his pockets a bit, he found the item he needed and, pressing the button, it made a strange squeak. After the sound signal, the man descended towards our hero, jumping from a high platform. The red-haired man asked to put his hand on the screen. He will take a DNA sample. However, the consequences will not be the most pleasant if he fails this time. Our hero came closer to the device and carefully placed his hand on it, carefully watching what would happen next. A strange space appeared around him, spreading everywhere. The girls looking at this were very surprised. When they tested this machine several times, they only had 3-meter beams, but here they are incredibly large. The guys looked at everything that was happening in surprise, and remembered that the genes of the strongest warrior and the fiery god of warriors were weaker than his. Even the judge himself was amazed by what he saw and asked to test it again. Our hero put his hand to the device again, and a wide smile slowly began to appear on his face. The manager looked at everything around him. The machine really works. This guy managed to amaze him. With the same look on his face, Luo looked at him and asked what awaited him now. After clearing his throat, the man said that his genetic strength exceeded 400%, and they accepted him. Of course, the first thing that rejoiced for him was his beloved girlfriend, and she was already running to him. The girl pounced on him with a warm embrace, while everyone continued to watch in surprise. Luo simply smiled in response and accepted her congratulations. And literally a few seconds later, his gaze fell on that gang of bandits who had been picking on him and bullying him all the time, like he has something he still needs to do. The blonde looked at one of them and asked how much he owed them. He was frightened only by his gaze, and said in a trembling voice that they no longer needed any money. Luo looked at him with a smile and just smirked. From this sight, the red-haired man even dropped the bat from his hands. Tears began to appear in his eyes. His knees shook, and his legs could no longer support him. The guy threw himself at the feet of our hero and began to nervously admit his guilt before him. He really shouldn't have mocked him. The rest of his gang repeated the same actions. Luo just looked at them. The girls who are present here began to whisper among themselves. They think that our hero is going too far, bullying the others. And right now, our hero was faced with the question: if he repays evil with good, will others repay him with good in return? Looking up, the boy noticed how the other guys were judging him for what he was doing. They already had displeased expressions on their faces. He remembers how it was before. If the old him were here now, it's unlikely that anyone would want to help him. After some time, in such an awkward atmosphere, silence finally came. Everyone looked at our hero, and he, in turn, walked up to this red-haired bully and gave him a good kick in the face. Now it was Snake's turn. Luo deftly grabbed him by the head. After such sharp and confident movements, the bald man began to worry greatly and tremble. Our hero is not going to feel sorry for him now. Remembering everything they did to him earlier, and so he hit him on the ground with all his might. Of course, he understands that such a weak blow was not enough for this hooligan, and he decided to add more. The rest of the gang just lay on the ground and didn't even move, so they wouldn't get hit too. Snake began to have tears in his eyes and beg for mercy, as he began to feel like he could easily be killed. The blonde looked down on him and promised to only break his arms but leave him alive. At that moment, his girlfriend ran up to him and praised him. He looked simply incredible. Everyone around watching what was happening was also surprised, and simply silently watched how events would unfold further. Jejia and her friend also looked at all this with wide eyes. Deep down, the girl began to hope that he wanted to date her again and had forgiven her for everything she had done for him. But it seems that our hero now doesn't pay any attention to her, and therefore walked past with his girlfriend. The judge looked at them all and saw everything. It seemed that this guy was able to impress him. After everything he was able to tell, he is confident that this warrior will definitely achieve great heights. 3 days later, the boys had to gather at the designated place. He was still the presenter and talked about the level of genetic power. There is a very important lecture going on now, how it can directly influence the achievements and strength of a warrior. But now, some of the students do not have a particularly high indicator. But still, as the teacher said, there is no need to worry, because it will rise when the children become stronger, which greatly interested one of the children. The redhead clapped his hands and praised him for his excellent question. Now is the time to tell you that in addition to gaining a level, you should not forget about the essence of animals. There are also some wildflowers that can help increase the abilities of students. In addition, weapons, equipment, or energy weapons can also be useful. But now full knowledge about these things is not available to them. The man promises that they will be able to study everything after increasing their rank. And today's topic is an explanation of a specific ranking system of warriors. There are several of them. In addition, it is equally important to know that each point is divided into levels and sub-levels. The students really like to hear about this. Everyone looks at the professor attentively. After they learned that by increasing their level, their powers will increase, their eyes lit up. Before they could blink, almost a month had passed, and the boys had already become more proficient in their skills and were training with robots. Luo was the first to take his place, and his friend looked at him, admiring his achievements and fighting style. The fat man shared that he feels he can improve his level. Our hero listened attentively to his friend and nodded his head, even despite the fact that he was currently in a fight. And so, his opponent is heading towards him. Luo gets into a fighting stance, but for some reason, his heart began to beat much faster. It felt like it was about to jump out of his chest. This was able to seriously slow him down and cause trembling in his body. The guy put up a block with his hands at the very last moment, since he couldn't attack normally because of this strange feeling. Unfortunately, he was unable to stay on his feet and was thrown into the wall. The blonde hit his back painfully. Of course, he quickly got to his feet and tried to come to his senses. But then his opponent rushed forward at maximum speed. His friend began to worry about our hero, but unfortunately, he was unable to intervene. Our hero managed to catch his incredibly fast fist with his gaze. He managed to find a way out of this situation. The robot froze in place, literally a couple of seconds, and he disappeared. Our hero's friend ran up to him and asked if everything was okay with him. But then, a strange feeling appeared in his body, as if a huge wave of energy had washed over him. Fatso noticed his worried look and began to look at him in confusion. It soon became clear to him that Luo had indeed unlocked the next level of his genetic power, and he could feel it through the sudden flow of energy. And it turned out that he had unlocked 2 levels. Of course, our hero is a little unsure about this, and therefore decided to look into his system. He needed to adjust the strength and level of his opponents. He coped with this, and therefore, immediately after the setup, he flew like a bullet towards them. One deft move, and the first one falls to the ground. His punch was quite powerful, and a hole appeared on his face before it hit the concrete floor. His friend watched this whole picture and, to put it mildly, his jaw almost dropped. A notification came from the system that he was returning to the level of an ordinary warrior with 700% gene strength. This is very surprising because most normal students receive a maximum of 200 or even less. Our hero just sighed heavily. It seemed to him that this was still not enough. Fatso told him that the student of the year had raised her level yesterday and had received only 2 pieces, no more. Soon, their training time came to an end. The boys gathered their things and headed home. On the way, they bought themselves some snacks after a hard day. Our hero was still thinking about that day. He was very surprised that he had increased his level for the first time, but immediately doubled. Soon he came home and immediately became lost in thought. It seemed to him that he was somehow special. The boy lay down on the bed and, sighing heavily, took his phone. To him, this whole situation looks as if he is the only one who could survive it. The first thing he noticed was a message from his girlfriend. She invited him to have breakfast together today. The girl corresponded with him for a bit, and after some time our hero went to her, slamming the door. Surprisingly, there were still people on the street at such a late hour. Shin was already waiting for him near the main entrance, chewing something with gusto. Hearing new quiet steps, the girl turned her gaze to the side. She noticed her friend and immediately ran up to him, forgetting to chew her food thoroughly. When the brunette came closer to him, she started coughing loudly and pounding on his chest. Our hero just laughed. He told her more than once that she should eat carefully, and he remembered one not very pleasant situation from her childhood. Finally, after some time, the girl was able to cough and she felt much better. And then, Shin noticed that her friend had managed to raise his rank and level. The guy felt a little awkward, but he still praised himself and asked what the good news was. The girl smiled and said that she had sent him something, and he could take a look at it in peace. Luo looked at his phone and saw a level with a common technique called wind steps. Where she got it, of course, she doesn't want to say, and so she just smiles. But after some time, she finally decided to share. As it turned out, she was chosen as a student for Mr. Long's special class yesterday, and she was able to exchange her rewards for this place. This slightly alarmed our hero. He seriously thought that it was impossible to exchange rewards with other students because those who did this would probably be punished. However, the girl only nudged him slightly with her shoulder and laughed, asking him not to let anyone find out about this. She put her finger to his mouth and said that this secret should remain between us. Our hero only looked into her eyes with displeasure. Shin also revealed that she had joined the student union, and their school was going to hold a welcoming party for an excellent senior student who was returning for an internship. And in honor of this event, the girl invites him to go with her. However, unfortunately for her, she gets rejected. The boy doesn't really like being in society. The brunette just laughed, but still didn't give up the idea of persuading him to go with her. And yet, in the end, she succeeded. And after a short and pleasant conversation, the guys went home. Our hero and his friend were already fast asleep in their beds. But then Luo woke up. He was still haunted by this technique that Shin gave him. Suddenly, he was startled by a loud emergency notification. Even Fatso woke up from this and began to look around. The guys needed to gather on the training field within 3 minutes. The boys pulled on their outer jackets and ran towards the exit as fast as they could. Finally, they arrived at the place, and the other team members and the teacher himself were already waiting for them. Their time had just ended now by his order. All those who were late and did not come would be fined, and if they did not have the required number of credits, the following rewards would also be deducted. The guys who were late were very upset. I tried to justify myself by saying that they didn't have time to react. They had very little time. The man looked at them sideways and reminded them that if someone interfered with his lesson, they would lose another 20. After that, everyone fell silent, and everyone who managed to do it during this time will receive a reward, and they will be credited after completing the mission. The fat man likes his strictness, and he shared this with our hero, whispering his opinion in his ear. The teacher asked for silence in the classroom and said that they had received an emergency message about people who had been trapped by strange animals, and that their team had been assigned to handle the matter. One of the students thought that maybe Mr. Han was joking. They have only been training here for a month, and most of them are ordinary warriors. But as it turned out, he also thought it would be too hard for them. It was not their mission in the first place. However, he decided to make some adjustments, and now it's their business, of course, it's dangerous. But in order to reach great heights, you have to try. The red-haired man said directly that he needed a team that would be warriors, not humus. He had already thought in advance who would lead the mission, and it would be Song Jae. The guy was already at level B and had access to such powers. The bespectacled man looked at him confidently and adjusted his glasses. He agreed to take on such responsibility. Our hero began to look at him carefully. It seems he remembers who he is. This is the guy Jiajia. He remembers very well that day when they first met, and unpleasant emotions and memories came over him. Even now, this romantic hugged his girlfriend, who looked intently at our hero. Luo's friend came up to him and laughed. He asked his friend not to be sad, because he was sure that one day their love could be resurrected. Of course, it was unpleasant to hear this, and the blonde asked him to keep quiet in this situation. The fat man looked after her. It seemed that he also had a crush on this girl. She was simply the standard of beauty, but their conversations were interrupted by their mentor, who reminded them that they only had 10 minutes. And then the city's defenses would close after that. If they stayed outside, then it would mean that they had failed the mission. And in addition to that, they would receive a penalty. All the boys, as soon as they heard about this, rushed forward, their running speed increasing after the time was cut in half. Soon, there was no trace of them to be seen or heard. Only a ruined city and the dark night all around. They walked and looked around when suddenly some stone fell from above towards them. Luo, along with her friend and girlfriend, became wary. They stood with their backs to each other and began to look around. A small team was the first to notice a huge monster sitting on the roof. Of course, our hero began to worry about their safety and asked to stop, looking intently at the beast. In front of them now is a spotted thundercat cub, a very close relative of the cheetah. The fat man seemed the bravest of them all. Since he was an ordinary sea-level beast, why not kill him now before he got warmed up? This boy's behavior was quite predictable. The other members of his team expected nothing else from him. He always rushes into battle first in all situations, and therefore, having deftly jumped up, he approached this monster as close as possible. It only took one blow to knock him off his feet, and the big cat flew to the side. Of course, this beast is not simple, and it possesses magic. Immediately after it landed, it opened its mouth wide. A large bright ball flew literally a couple of millimeters from the fat man's face. It's a good thing he managed to dodge it. When he saw the destructive power of this little beast, his knees began to tremble slightly. Of course, like any member of the cheetah family, he has incredible speed and strength, so the fact that Fatso was distracted for a moment is already a minus. The boy didn't have time to turn away or attack. The shaggy one jumped on his chest. It was a good thing he managed to push it aside and escape. The beast continued to run after him, trying to attack. Jaja watched closely from the side, amazed at the boy's courage. Of course, she wanted to help him, but her boyfriend stopped her and asked her not to rush. As a leader, he gave instructions to perform when he was exhausted. It seemed illogical and strange to her, and she asked why they were doing this. The bespectacled man already has a strategy. He needs this student to make the beast lose more energy, because this way, it will be easier for them to defeat him in the final battle. Our hero is amazed by his stubbornness. He does not ask for help even when such a tense situation happened. Meanwhile, the fat man fell to his knees and covered himself with his hands so that the beast wouldn't eat him. He got a good beating from him. The tailed one ran up to him and injured his hand with its sharp claws. This was the last straw. The fat man got scared and started running away from him as far as possible, asking for help. Unexpectedly for him, a girl came to his defense. He barely opened his eyes and began to watch what would happen next. The blonde got tired of watching him suffer and decided to help him. Her eyes are full of confidence now. She wants to fight him now. He also won't back down and isn't going to lose, so he runs straight towards her. The girl was not afraid and deftly hit him in the forehead with her fist, breaking his horn. Shaggy stepped back and covered the place where the blow was struck with his paw. Even with such a serious injury, he still doesn't intend to retreat. And so, when the pain has subsided a little, he gets into a fighting stance and is going to attack in earnest. Her friend was very scared for her. She thought that she would not be able to withstand such an attack. The boy and his team also asked to be careful. The battle is starting to gain momentum. The blonde found herself in the crosshairs of this monster, but it seems that she is not afraid at all. On the contrary, as if she was waiting for this moment. The girl pushed off the ground with her foot and jumped high. It seems that she now has a plan in her head on how to work with this beast. She already knows how to repel this wave of attack, and so she concentrated all her strength in her right leg. One well-aimed shot and she was able to hit the ball much higher into the air. After this, Jiaja landed on the ground and did a backflip. Of course, that's not all. The monster is still alive, and she's going to approach him as stealthily as possible. The girl moves closer to him and makes a powerful swing with her leg, hitting him in the jaw. The cheetah-like creature fell to the ground and now shows no signs of life. And finally, the blonde, looking at him, smiled broadly. This was her first serious victory. All the guys were delighted with her heroic battle. Of course, except for our hero. Her friend was very proud of her because she has more than 500% genetic strength. Her friend also supported her, calling her a key student with incredible talents. These compliments and joys caressed her ears. She was very glad to hear it. And then, her gaze fixed on our hero, she still considers Song much better than Luo, because he has a lot of resources, without special herbs and or blood crystals. The boy is unlikely to catch up with him. The girl jumped from a height towards her boyfriend, and he, looking into her eyes, smiled broadly. It seems like the bespectacled guy noticed the way she was looking at her ex and he really doesn't like it. But Jiajia calmed him down. taking him by the hand, reminding him that he was an ordinary person and that he could not be compared to him, because he did not deserve it. Ji looked at her menacingly and said that she had better continue to think that way. Otherwise, he would be able to kill him without any problem. The girl approached the slain beast and began to look at it. It was a pity, but there was no blood crystal left near it after the battle. Soon, they went into a quiet corner of the street to catch their breath. The captain asked her friend to light a fire. However, she was against it, because she had read that it is better not to use fires in the wild because it can attract strange animals. The bespectacled man sighed heavily and asked them to relax, because he had set warning traps around, promising that they would know for sure when someone would approach them. However, this did not calm her down one bit, because some creatures are very fast and stealthy, and therefore can easily bypass his intricate traps. Of course, a city guy like him didn't like the fact that she was being subjected to the opinion of his abilities, and then he offered her to lead the team. Our hero and his friend sat to the side and simply watched everything that was happening. The fat man whispered in his ear that he thought this song was too arrogant. He didn't even allow anyone to ask him questions. Luo turned to him and said that he was the commander of the squad. And since that was the case, then they had to do what he said, promising to help each other and stand guard at night. There were also guys who I am completely confident in. Everyone was very happy that they were able to make a fire. Now they can light up and relax. Suddenly, Song approached our hero and addressed him in a calm tone. So to speak, out of old friendship, he wants him to help him. The blonde looked up at him and asked how he could be so useful to him. Glasses shared with him that even though he had set up a trap, they still needed someone on guard to avoid any unforeseen incidents. Our hero understood him at a half word. He agreed to be the first on patrol, and his friend agreed to help him a couple of hours after sleep. And then Song wanted to tease him. He reminded him that Luo was more talented and stronger than most of the others. He couldn't believe that he needed help with such simple things. The boy just looked at him and didn't answer. The fat man interrupted their conversation and said that everything was fine, because 4 hours of rest was enough for him. And of course, no man would be in shape if he stood all night without sleep. It seems that even this answer did not satisfy the bespectacled man. He now thinks that it would be nice if he, instead of Luo, sat on guard all night. This was too much for him. It seemed that he got angry, and he got up from his seat, walking straight towards him. But our hero stopped him. He wouldn't want a fight to start between them right here. However, to prevent this from happening, he agreed to look after the camp. The commander approached him, laughing slightly, and told him not to allow himself to fall asleep by accident. He also promised that if anyone died, he would do his job and pass on his desertion to the school. Soon it was night, and many of the boys had already fallen asleep. They laid out some cardboard boxes, and Jiaja and her friend slept next to each other, next to her boyfriend. Our hero, as he promised, is now sitting on guard and trying not to close his eyes. He had a view of the forest, where crickets were singing and bats were occasionally flying by. His friend came up to him and addressed him in a sleepy voice. The fat man asked what he was doing here. He also decided to sit down next to her, and first wiped the cold stone from dust with his hand. The brunette asked him to go get some sleep, promising to sit on guard himself. But Luo refused, saying that everything was fine now, and asked him to go and rest now. He already had dark circles under his eyes from fatigue. Pukliash somehow managed to open his eyes and look at him. He shared that he never slept deeply, and besides, it was very difficult for him to sleep on his own bed. With this, he was able to justify the fact that he had had enough of this rest, and after that he yawned loudly. But then it seemed that our hero heard something, and interrupting his yawn, covered his mouth with his hand. There was a deathly silence all around, and the blonde asked him to listen to what was happening around him. But it seemed that Fatso still didn't understand what was happening, and began to nervously glance at the horizon. The only thing he could hear now was the crackling of sticks from the fire, and nothing else. Our hero heard something else, something that made a sound. The brunette just sighed heavily, and it seemed to him that he was now being taken for a fool. Or perhaps his brother was starting to hallucinate, but his worried look doesn't say anything about it, and it doesn't even look like a joke. Luo squatted down and looked him straight in the eyes. Soon, these sounds became so loud that the fat man finally heard them, and animals began to appear around. This time, they were much smaller than that lynx, but no less dangerous. They moved quickly through the thick grass, which was what made that rustling sound. One of them had already managed to get into the base and howled loudly. The other participants also woke up from this strange roar, rubbing their eyes, trying to understand what was happening here. Soon, these shaggy ones appeared at their base, and each one had already chosen an opponent for battle. All the students were looking at what was happening around them, and since they were sleepy, their reactions were still slow. Some people started running away out of fear because they still can't understand how to fight them. Our hero was the first to rush into battle and was able to skillfully hit one beast. When Luo looked up, he noticed that he had managed to attack one of them and land a good blow. However, he quickly came to his senses and rushed towards our hero. Although someone was agile, the boy managed to jump to the side to avoid a direct hit. From that moment on, it became clear to everyone that this was no longer a joke. They needed to fight, and everyone was already thinking about what to do next. The blonde stepped back and began to stare intently at his opponent, who was already running towards him. This time, our hero did not run away, but deftly grabbed him by the paw. He managed to throw it over himself, and it didn't even have time to inflict even minimal damage on him. His girlfriend also did not sleep. Shin really likes to fight with her legs, and therefore, from a high jump, she hits the lynx right on the head. Jia also doesn't sleep. She's very good at fighting with her fists. She's already managed to knock several animals to the ground. For a while, all the sounds in the battlefield itself became silent. The guys began to look around, because there was still a feeling that this was not the end yet. And indeed, they were not mistaken. There was still at least one beast within their radius. His fur was burning very brightly, and he found himself at the very top, right above them. Some of the guys had already noticed him. These were the weakest participants who did not know how to fight. When this creature jumped from above, they began to run as fast as they could, so as not to get injured and save their lives. The toothy monster began to hiss, and its fur instantly became sharp, like thorns that it released to the sides. The girls were able to cover themselves with their hands to avoid the attack, but these hopeless students couldn't. Even though they were given the order to attack together, they were unable to gather themselves, unlike Jiajia's friend, who took out knives and was already running towards them as fast as she could. Even in spite of my fear, I would like to help and save at least some of the students from death. The fat man was also ready and took out his weapon. He reminded them that if they were hiding now, they would easily be killed. This was not a manly act, and now their time has come. This time this monster was quite huge and had already approached the bravest participants. Their fight could be heard even in the forest. Jiajia's red-eyed friend had already dealt with several beasts, but it was still very difficult for her, and she asked Song to come to her aid. She was almost exhausted, and she would really need the captain's help now. His classmate was next to him and also wanted to help them, because without help they would not cope and would not do without victims. However, the bespectacled man refused. He would like this king of the lynx to bring them to a dying state. And only at that moment, he wants to save them all. Because then after that, they will consider him a hero. Our hero managed to climb high above this beast and carefully watched everything that was happening in order to correctly assess the situation. After a detailed examination, he noticed that he had a wound on his leg, but it was quite old. And this small detail made him think seriously. Meanwhile, that blue-haired girl still continued to bravely fight him. And it seemed like he was extremely furious. For the umpteenth time, the beast releases its sharp spikes from its back. She was already tired of defending herself from him, and so she simply covered her face with her hands, trying to move back. However, she did not notice that behind her lay the body of a dead animal, and she touched it with her foot. It was completely by accident, but she got caught over him and couldn't keep her balance. It seemed that this monster was very happy about this, and therefore, spreading its paws wide, began to carefully watch its victim. The girl fell on her back and was unable to react in time, and at that time, this animal had already pounced on her. The only thing she can do now is just scream. I hope that at least someone will help her. This beast had already managed to bare its fangs and was about to tear apart the captured victim with them. However, he did not notice how someone had already made his way to them and boldly grabbed him by the lower jaw. As it turned out, our hero arrived to help, and just in time, he managed to use a combination of several attacks, and in addition, successfully break several of his bones. Luo also couldn't leave this girl alone in this state, and approached her, trying to cover her with himself. After a couple of seconds, she was able to come to her senses. Her breathing became more or less even and she calmed down. And only now did she notice who stood up for her, not letting her say a word. Our hero asked her to be more careful next time and watch her step. The girl with the bob was able to thank him with a slightly trembling voice. But it was too early to rejoice. The monster was still standing at the ready and preparing to attack. Their commander was closely observing the entire situation that had just happened. From his expression, one could conclude that this young man was again sticking his nose into things that weren't his business, which really irritated him. Suddenly, one of the team members asked him to take a look at what was happening now. The King of Lynx took on a strange shape and seemed to be drowning in fire. It all became clear to the girl at once. His genes were mutating right now before their eyes. His friend was also watching everything that had just happened. He saw everything that happened here. For some reason, he was overcome with panic. It seemed to him that this boy would not be able to cope with the monster, and therefore he asked him to run away from here as quickly as possible. The fat man ran away from the scene at full speed, along with Jiajia and several other students, but Luo stood rooted to the spot. He was struck by his comrade's stubbornness, and he simply began to watch what would happen next. Our hero simply looked at this beast, which was coming closer and closer to him. The chubby guy became nervous. When he could see how big he was, his body began to tremble, and he again asked his friend to get out of here as quickly as possible. The other students were also amazed at his courage, and some began to guess that he was now going to defeat him alone. The girl he saved also began to worry about him. It seems to her that he is going to certain death. However, his friend asked him not to worry. He said that Luo is a B level. Also, after a while, he added that now he has about 700%. And besides, he was just able to seriously wound the king. And besides, with one blow, giving hope that he has a very good chance. Hearing the incredible strength this seemingly fragile guy had, the girl's eyes almost popped out of her head, and she became curious about how he was able to achieve this. But still, this can't calm her down. It seems that her friend has forgotten the theory of the god of warriors. Warriors are much weaker than beasts of their level. His friend overheard their conversation and also joined the discussion. Shin is almost sure and knows that even the god of warriors himself cannot kill these creatures of the same level as him. And it turns out that the only thing he can do now is run. And the cowardly Song watched everything that was happening from around the corner, and now he begins to understand that he was wrong. He seems stronger than he could have expected. He still thinks Luo is a fool, because he is trying to do something that even God can't do, and yet he doesn't give up on his plan. When everyone is halfway to death, he wants to save them all, thus achieving the glory that will belong only to him. Meanwhile, the king had already managed to rest and take a so-called break. Now was the time for a real fight. He was able to easily create a huge, bright whirlwind and direct it at his opponents. The fat man, seeing this, was very scared. His legs even started shaking because it was a fire tornado. Nobody expected to see this. Even the short-haired girl was surprised. She had to step back a little so as not to get into the center. She understands perfectly well that even the highest warriors cannot avoid this skill, and her friend will simply say goodbye to life if he gets in the way. This whirlwind grew stronger and stronger, more powerful with each passing second, and had no intention of weakening its grip. However, it seems that our hero was not at all frightened by this. He deftly dodged all of his attacks and was not able to receive a single scratch from these pathetic attempts to defeat him. The bespectacled man simply watched this and couldn't believe it. He didn't recognize this technique. It was unknown to him. And while Luo was jumping away from these sudden rays of the whirlwind, a plan had already matured in his head on how to move forward. He had to jump above his level, and he saw this toothy King Lynx staring at him and looking straight into his eyes. But it seemed that this did not frighten him at all. A soft smile began to appear on his face. It seemed that he was confident that he would win. One clever move, and the boy gives him a nice punch in the face. Because of the dust that rose in the air, it was not entirely clear whether he had managed to hit it. But then he saw how the body of this beast flew in the opposite direction. The next point of his plan was to grab him. He managed to get close to the king and grab him by the tail. The boy was able to hit him into the ground, and it seems that this blow was decisive. The beast no longer moves. All the boys who were watching all this were incredibly happy. Could this seemingly fragile boy really save them all? A smile began to appear on their faces. The students began to go out onto the battlefield. And after the incredible courage he showed, they felt much lighter and calmer in their souls. It seemed like the only one who wasn't happy here was Song Jae. He carefully adjusted his glasses and began to express himself with displeasure. The first one to approach him was the red-eyed classmate, who thanked him with a smile for everything he had done. And Jiajia was watching this whole conversation. It seemed like she didn't like the fact that he was smiling back at her. After everything that happened, Fatso finally got angry at the captain, and rubbing his clothes from the dust, began to make claims to him. How can he so calmly watch their death and not interfere? However, Luo walked up to him and stopped him in a friendly manner, asking him not to be angry. This scoundrel must have his own reason for this. But it seems that his friend was not going to turn this on him so easily. What other reasons could there be? When people's lives are at stake, he sincerely believes that this guy is not worthy of the title of warrior. It seems that the brown-eyed man's anger has begun to take over him. He cannot believe that their own captain can abandon his allies, betray their trust. He clearly has no conscience. The guys who heard his evil speech also took his side. Song really did behave disgustingly. However, even for this, the bespectacled man found a way to justify himself. Adjusting his glasses, he began to justify himself by saying that he wanted and expected a chance to enter the battle. However, he put all the blame on Luo, as if he'd helped him from the very beginning, expecting someone to die. Obviously, this was a pure lie. Fatso reminded him that if it weren't for his friend, everyone here would have died long ago, and reminded him that since he had become an average warrior, it wouldn't be a problem for him to deal with the king on his own. He turned to all the guys who had seen everything that was happening and boldly proposed to change the captain, to give these powers to his friend Luo Li. And it seemed that everyone agreed. Of course, he began to threaten this impudent person that if they spoke out against him, they would have serious problems in the future. Even despite this, the blue-haired girl was the first to agree to change the leader. But there were also those who rejected the idea, fearing Song's reaction. The fat man looked at them with displeasure. He couldn't believe that these fools seriously thought that this bespectacled man would let them go so easily, since they had already refused. However, he killed them all and praised those who decided to stay with him, and promised to give them 2 special herbs, and also promised that his family would hire them after graduation, promising them high earnings. It seemed like the 2 of them were taken in by his chatter and were very happy. Glasses has decided to lead this mission again, and is serious about completing it under his leadership. Meanwhile, while everyone was chatting, our hero approached the fallen King Lynx and began to check him. It seems that this time he managed to find the blood crystal. His friend noticed this and came up to him. He whispered in his ear and told him that this useful item can strengthen the warrior's genes. It has a much better effect than months of training, and very few animals can have them. It is a great rarity. The boys stared at this stone and began to examine it. Fatty asked him to look at what kind of crystal it was. The blonde began to examine it carefully. It seemed that this object gave about 50% resistance. It looks like it increases defense. The brown-eyed man expected it to increase strength and was a little upset. Our hero twirled it in his hands a little more and immediately swallowed it. After absorbing it, he had a very interesting feeling. He became light as a feather, as if he was flying. But this feeling also quickly passed. After a couple of minutes, the boy decided to look at his tablet and take it to heart. That this medicine that he was given not only enhances his characteristics, it also makes him bring more from each crystal and herbs that he receives. He didn't even notice that the other guys had already set off on their journey. His friend called him to follow him. Now is the time to fulfill the most important mission. Why did they come here? They approached a building without windows and doors. People are locked there, but they do not know the number. And they broke the satellite communication device. There will be no communication with them. Suddenly, our hero received a notification on his phone, and he began to examine it carefully together with his friend. They received a message from school, which was very important. It showed that the city was surrounded by Cyclops and their nest. The map could only confirm this. In isolated cases, red dots appeared on it. These were animals that had been recognized by the satellite, and it was necessary to speak more quietly now so as not to be detected. However, the fat man's curiosity got the better of him, and he decided to look out from the ambush and see for himself what it all looked like. As soon as he looked outside, his eyes almost popped out of his head from what he saw. There were too many of these Cyclops. They were sitting on the roof of the neighboring building in small groups. The girls were already thinking about what to do next. Jia suggested not to go straight ahead. Maybe they would need to get support if they went as such a small team. Her friend agreed with her that if they were surrounded, it would be very unpleasant. And she saw that the best way out of the situation was to call for reinforcements. A guy named Jia approached them and asked in a displeased tone, "Why are they so afraid of them?" After all, these creatures have about 100% of genetic power, and also said that he already has a plan for this case. In fact, he thinks that asking for help would be too easy for our hero, and that's the only thing that worries him. Glasses asked everyone to gather around him to discuss the plan. He said that there were the fewest animals in the east and north. They would be able to split into 3 groups, and also spoke about the duties of each. All the guys listened to him attentively. He suggested that one would save people, the second would attract attention, and the third would help with treatment. And also, it would be quite logical if they could enter from the north and escape from the east side, and he needed to show this on the map so that everyone would understand visually. It seemed that for the first time, our hero liked his plan, and he nodded his head in satisfaction. Glasses gave orders to his girlfriend, Li Ting-su, and himself to be in the first team, while Wang Xiu-cheng and the rest of the guys would be in the third. But then, Fatso thought about it and decided to ask again. Does he really mean that in the second team of those who distract the monsters there will only be Luo? And indeed, to everyone else it seemed suspicious. The guys looked at him and waited for an explanation. Song said that the second team should protect and does not need many people. And if they do not attract the attention of the monsters, then they will not be in any danger. And if they are noticed, it is best to use the least number of people. He approached our hero and patted him on the shoulder. He believes that this guy has more power than him, and therefore explained that he is the best choice. It seemed that our hero didn't care at all. He was satisfied with this course of events and he just nodded his head. And meanwhile, monsters were still sitting on the streets. There wasn't a single one where they weren't there at all. One of the Cyclops found a comfortable spot on a rock and muttered something under his breath. He was probably so engrossed in his thoughts that he didn't notice how they had already gotten close to him. Our hero grabbed him carefully by the chin and the top of his head, turning it sharply to the left. And only at that moment did the monster open his eye. It was too late to react. He fell to the ground unconscious. It seems that Luo managed to break his neck. The boys watched everything that was happening carefully, and on command they began to move forward. Finally, they arrived at their destination, a huge building with many floors. This is where the locked people are. The friendly team began to carefully look into each floor, and soon noticed a whole group of Cyclops who were sitting and chewing meat. The girl Jiajia was a little wary. There really were too many animals here. It would be impossible to get there stealthily. In addition, they noticed that there were already other creatures behind them. Unfortunately, now they won't be able to retreat. Our hero suggested that they climb up anyway, so that they could get where they needed to go. The other guys thought it was absurd. How could they do it if there were people on the very top floor? But, unfortunately, there is no other way out. Our hero asked everyone to be careful. There is a place to rest on each floor, and he was able to convince the guys that everything will be fine. The friends climbed onto the roof of a neighboring building and began to carefully climb up the building one by one so as not to fall and attract less attention. They were very lucky that the surface was a little uneven, and there was something to grab onto with their feet. Very soon, they were able to arrive at the appointed place. Luo flew into the window with his foot and broke the glass with his foot. The people who were there were frightened by such a loud noise and huddled in the corners. The blond man asked everyone to sit quietly in a whisper and introduced himself as a student from the university, saying that he had been told to help them all get out of here. The mother hugged her child and cried with joy. Could it be that people had appeared who came to save them all? The little girl, who was also tired of sitting here, was very happy that their heroes had finally arrived. The old man was also there, and he asked if the boy had come alone to save them. Grandfather said that he looked very young and that saving them could cost him his life, and also suggested calling for reinforcements. But it seemed that there was not a single drop of fear in Luo's eyes. He said that more people would come here soon, and there was another squad waiting outside. Song, Jiajia and her friend carefully climbed into the window so as not to make noise. It seemed that the bespectacled man was angered by the fact that there were so many people here, and he began to look at everyone with displeasure. The old man lowered his head and said that when they were first locked up, there were 24 more of them. They were able to survive only because they used a defense system. However, it was also broken. The old man told them with horror that these Cyclops were keeping them here as if they were food, and there was great fear in his eyes that they might be next. The bespectacled man sighed heavily. There were too many people here for him. He couldn't imagine how they could save them all. Besides, his assistant reminded him that they also wouldn't be able to knock out these monsters because they were too strong. Our hero thought about it too. Cyclops are a brutal species that evolved from gorillas. They are a social animal that only works in groups, and only a few people will be able to escape if they are going to fight them directly. The captain put forward his proposal. He believes that the only thing they can do now is to make a sacrifice. They will save only the strong and healthy from here. Our hero looked at him and asked how he planned to deal with the others. The bespectacled man said calmly that he thought they could get out on their own. After this, many people began to rebel and worry. They could not believe that such warriors would dare to leave them alone. Some even knelt before our hero and asked for help. It would be better not to make any unnecessary noise here. And he asked everyone to be quiet. and he himself turned to the commander and said that he did not agree with his decision. The red-eyed one also frowned and expressed her displeasure. For her, it was too cruel. They couldn't do that. They were people too. Of course, Song was unhappy with this reaction from the others and asked what they were proposing then. The girl stood her ground and continued to suggest calling for reinforcements. The guy yelled at her and reminded her that it would take them at least a day to get here from school, and then it might be too late. The student wanted to object, but he quickly shut her up. She should know the consequences of disobeying orders during a mission. And yet, she stubbornly approached the people who were watching this whole scandal and asked them to follow her. A spark of hope appeared in their eyes that they could be saved. Seeing this behavior, Song became even more angry at her and said that they could only take one, and also added that the child was too young and would only slow them down. Hearing this, the baby began to cry loudly and hugged his dad. He doesn't want to be separated from his parents. Even despite this, the bespectacled man was not going to deviate from his plan and said that he could only take one. Our hero sighed heavily and said that he thought they could split them up, take some out first and then come back for the rest. And he didn't see any problem with that. But the stubborn Song still began to argue with him. He reminded that ordinary people cannot hide their smell. They physically do not have enough potions to hide everyone. Even in such a situation, our hero is confident that they have a chance to win with his plan. He already has one solution. He wants to give his potion to the topic who needs to hide their scent, and told the other participants that they will return with medicine after taking them back. They will also have to go back and forth several times. After these words, the blonde sat down in front of the first group of people, namely in front of the family with the child, holding out this flask, said that it was made from the blood of a cyclops, and each of them had a similar ampule. The old man praised him for his excellent idea, and said that this was the behavior of a true and courageous warrior. However, the girl began to worry about him, because if he gives this potion, he puts his protection at risk. And if something goes wrong, there is a high chance of saying goodbye to his life. Our hero said that everything is fine. He knows and understands perfectly well what he is doing and what he is getting into. His classmate decided to support him and handed him her potion. She thought that with two it would be faster and promised to stay here. Glasses, together with Shin, came to the window and said that it was time for them to go, and they needed to deal with all of this faster. An old man approached our hero and, taking him by the hand, thanked him for agreeing to accept his offer. The boy looked at him seriously and said that he did the best he could in this situation. Grandfather only smiled in response. He really thinks this boy is a good person, and promised to share his gratitude when he gets out of here. The first group of people had already left, and our hero and his classmates sat and waited in line. The boy thought about it. He couldn't expect that he would be so tense. It felt like he had entered a new world. He remembers that he learned from the forum that a warrior from level A has a genetic power of about 2,000%, and this allows him to hear an ant falling from a rock. Right now, this is the ideal goal for him. However, achieving it will not be easy. And then his girlfriend sat down next to him, looking around with a slightly confused look. The girl decided to start the dialogue first and asked what he was thinking about. He didn't want to answer her, and simply said that it was his personal matter. After this phrase, she felt awkward. The red-eyed one said that she was very sorry for what she had done. The girl looked away. She really regretted what she said to him earlier. Covering her face with her hands, she wanted to thank him for saving her in a difficult moment. Suddenly, they both heard some strange noise from above and looked at one point together. Their friends and the commander himself came to them, who, as always, was dissatisfied with something. The fat man, as soon as he saw his friend, immediately ran to him and sat down. He heard from others that he needed help, to which our hero only laughed. Since even this shorty was fine, then certainly nothing could have happened to Luo. The boys laughed until Song came up to them and asked Wang Xucheng to hurry up and take the people to the safe place, since they would have to come back here again. The brown-eyed man only snorted in displeasure in response. However, duty calls. He needs to get down to business in any case. He says goodbye to our hero and runs to the exit. The fat man took the girl on his back and asked her to hold on tighter. He was very careful, and slowly but deftly descended down the building. And our hero and his friend had already decided who they would carry out, and so they were waiting for their turn. A few seconds later, Song came to them and, having caught his breath, said that this approach would be the last. And before the start, the bespectacled man gave them vials that would help them a lot. In addition, the commander gave them the order to split up, even though they hide their scents in such a clever way. But still, the Cyclops can notice the group immediately. The girl took the small child on her back and headed towards the window, and finally asked our hero to be careful. Before jumping, she also asked the girl to hold on tight and not to be afraid, and she obediently nodded her head. After some time, she now has already hit 4. It's time for our hero to move out together with his grandfather. The old man jumped on his back and also asked that if the Cyclops attacked them, to just leave him alone so as not to slow him down. But it seems that our hero doesn't care at all. He promised that everything will be fine with the old man. While everyone was quietly descending, Luo decided to jump from a height and speed up his fall. His grandfather could not even imagine that he was thinking about such a thing. The commander of their team was also delighted with this. His eyes almost popped out of his head from what he saw, and our hero is just fine now. He is almost close to the earth. The only thing he needs now is to grab onto the wall of the building and slow down a little. The bespectacled man looks after him in surprise and can already guess that this student is much stronger than him. A fear has appeared in his soul that if he allows him to live now, then it will be much more difficult to deal with him later. Meanwhile, Luo had already reached the ground and carefully jumped down, holding his grandfather tightly. Looking around, the boy noticed that his commander was heading in the direction of not the gathering point but the Cyclops nest. And this made him a little wary. Well, now is the time for me to think. He went to the appointed place with the old man on his back. He sees how worried he is and tried to calm him down. It's very good that the guys managed to save everyone. Suddenly, an uninvited guest appears on the horizon, causing a stir. It looks a lot like a giant gorilla. It just came out of nowhere. And besides, it seems that she is incredibly strong. Just the sight of her gave our hero goosebumps. When the boy got a closer look at her, he immediately recognized that it was the fiery Monkey King. He became suspicious that this one was so aggressive, because usually, even though it is an immoral and sinful creature, it is usually calm. And now it is chasing after Song, who is screaming at the top of his lungs and asking for help. Of course, Luo refused. He has a much more important task now, and that is why the boy picked up speed and jumped higher. And before the start, he warned his grandfather that now his speed would be much higher than it was the first time. 1 second, and he had already jumped high into the air. And then, a wide smile appears on the bespectacled man's face. He managed to spray him with an estrogen solution. It seems that Luo knows nothing about this, and as if nothing had happened, carries the old man where he needs to go. As it turns out, if the Monkey King smells this scent, it will follow him until his death, and it will be impossible to hide from it. This time, the bespectacled man does not want to let him escape. After he was insulted, he cannot help but take revenge. His only way out is death. It seems that after a couple of minutes, the boy got tired of running away from the monkey. He couldn't just break away from him while he had a load on his back. Now he is completely confused and does not know which way to turn, where to go to save his life and the life of this man. In running, he was able to open the system, albeit with great difficulty. But now he can understand where he should move approximately. A map of the city appeared in front of him, and Luo immediately began to study it carefully. It seems he now understands where he needs to go. At this time, Song rushes after him to control the situation. He is also very tired of running, but he needs to follow where this guy is heading. He had to open his map too, and apparently he was heading towards the glacial basin. It seemed to him that this was a direct path to death. But after a minute, he realized that he wanted to use him to pacify the fiery Monkey King, and besides, the bespectacled man saw a message from him. He asked to lure this beast there to deal with him. And after that, a wide smile appeared on the guy's face. And just in case, to be on the safe side and avoid being attacked by a monkey, he needs to apply some androgenic solution to himself. After he did everything right, Song followed right after him. Soon, our hero found himself on the spot. This is an unusual environment of the glacial basin, in which the influence is about 800%. Fortunately, our hero is lucky, because he has the same level of resistance. He can fully adapt and not experience pain. But it seems that he has completely forgotten about the old man. He has already begun to feel weak. The boy began to worry, and having sat him down on a stone, asked him to wake up, lightly tugging at his shoulders. This was not enough, and so he decided to give him energy medicine. After a few seconds, the old man came to his senses and thanked him for being able to save him twice in one day. Our hero asked him not to worry and promised that they would definitely get out of here alive. Suddenly, he heard his name. Song was calling him. When he arrived in this cold place, he immediately got tired of sneezing. It is incredibly cold here, but it is very good that he has a lot of blood crystals and plus special herbs. He is ready for everything. This huge gorilla was still rushing after them. It seems that the female pheromones are working at full capacity, and it seems that the Monkey King has no more obstacles in his way. Seeing him, the guys hid, and Luo began to analyze him. This beast reads fire to ice, and therefore resistance to frost is now weak. He is sure that together they can easily kill him. The bespectacled man began to laugh loudly. Of course it was a good idea. But now it looked like our hero would fight alone and directly said that he wanted to deal with him. The guy didn't expect to hear this from him, and asked him again what he meant. It seems that Song is no longer going to hide his true intentions. He will not let him leave here, and admitted that he sprayed him with an estrogen solution in advance. Even though this monkey does not like to harm people, it is very sensitive to female scents. And only now, our hero realized what situation he found himself in. The only thing he had to do now was to grab her hand from afar and run as fast as he could. But it seems that he won't be able to do this. Song stands in his way and laughs loudly, trying to stop him. The bespectacled man grabbed our hero by the hand and threw him into a block of ice, while grandfather watched all this. To be honest, he was amazed by his strength, but now he doesn't even have 400%. The blonde can't believe that this man would risk breaking school rules in order to kill him. He came closer to him and asked again if he had understood him correctly. The bespectacled boy turned it all down to the fact that they were close classmates, and he wouldn't dare raise a hand against him. However, if the Monkey King deals with him, the school will not suspect him. Our hero is shocked by his meanness and already begins to hate him. The bastard jumped back, laughing loudly. Now he's going to enjoy this show here and now. Suddenly he hears a strange noise above his head and nervously looks up. The Monkey King himself flies above him with a huge club, and then he suddenly falls to the ground and hits the cobblestone where Song is sitting. It's very good for him that he managed to jump to the side a little and didn't get hit on the head. However, the guy is now in a state of shock. He could not have expected such a disaster from above. The gorilla made another powerful swing with the club right above him, and with the second pass it hit him. The guy flew further to the side and crashed into icy boulders. Now there is a very strange feeling in his head. He does not understand what is happening, and it looks like our hero is standing to the side and mocking him. The bespectacled man still doesn't understand why everything is happening this way. Only now does he begin to suspect that something is fishy here, and it looks like his classmate is to blame for everything. Our hero just laughed and said what a disgusting and treacherous person Song Jae was. He reminded him of how he'd been setting him up ever since they'd arrived in this town, deliberately spraying him with estrogen, splitting the group to get him away from the other students. And besides that, he did a lot for him, in a bad way. And only now the bespectacled man begins to understand that he already knew everything, but said nothing. Now he is only interested in this question. How could he guess that he can really understand the language of animals? The blonde just laughed in response. It seems that he really has a rich imagination, but there is something that he did not take into account. A female monkey. And while he was chatting, a huge boulder flew at him and crushed him. It looks like his friend is having trouble determining his gender. The male has black hair on the back of his head, but the women's ones are dark gray, and this turned out to be a failure for him. While the bespectacled man is lying on the ground, this lady is already running towards him at full speed. And finally, our hero wishes him to have a good time with the fiery Monkey King, because this is not available to ordinary people. Hearing this phrase, the bespectacled man became very scared and began to run away, trying to save himself. The blonde noticed how he was about to run away from there and ran towards him. He hit the impudent fellow in the chest and said that this was impossible now. The bespectacled man flew back, straight towards the monkey, and was not even able to repel his attack. Only now does he begin to understand that he has been deceived, that he has a powerful force, and that he is not under the influence of the environment. Our hero only sighed heavily in response. Unfortunately, his friend thought about this too late. It turned out that he dug his own grave, and now, after everything he did, the boy certainly won't let him get away. The bespectacled man became scared and doesn't know what to do with himself now. And then, this lady runs up to him again, grabs him by the leg, and throws him into a block of ice. The guy no longer had the strength to hold on. It really was very difficult to hide from her. In the eyes of the monkey, he looks like a male monkey, and finally, she managed to catch up with him. The creature tore his clothes off and threw them everywhere. The guy tried to escape, but he couldn't get out of its clutches. Our hero could not have expected that everything would turn out exactly this way. He did not think that it would be so cruel. It seems that the old man he saved was also shocked by what he saw. He had never seen anything like this in his entire life. Luo laughed lightly and reminded him that he hadn't done anything like that, and hadn't even fought with him. This guy had dug his own grave. Grandfather immediately felt that he had an evil heart. And if anyone found out about this, he promised to testify in favor of his savior. Our hero was very grateful to him and only smiled in response. Meanwhile, Song seemed to have gathered his strength and was able to give a good fight to the monkey, hitting it in the stomach. It was quite powerful. The beast flew into a nearby icy boulder. Hearing such a loud roar, our hero became alert and did not immediately understand what had happened. When the smoke cleared, he saw a monkey with a huge wound on its stomach. It looked like it was in quite a bit of pain. Meanwhile, the bespectacled man tried to come to his senses and was already looking for our hero with his eyes. It seems that this time he is seriously angry and is ready to deal with him with his own hands. The blonde just stood and watched. It seemed to him that it had become clear what had just happened. Grandfather was also surprised. This impudent fellow uses a gene enhancement potion. The boy asked him what it was, and it turned out that it was the latest warrior potion developed by a pharmaceutical company. And after use, they significantly strengthen and increase resistance. Our hero's eyes almost popped out of his head when he heard how dangerous they were. It was madness. This potion, as it turned out, has not appeared on sale for a long time. Although at a critical moment it can save someone's life, it also has serious side effects, and its effect lasts only half an hour. There is a high risk of becoming disabled, but it seems that Song doesn't care at all about this. He still threatens to deal with our hero. It was obvious that the Monkey King was not himself after such treatment. However, the victim was even more furious. He was disgusted even to look at him. This time he doesn't intend to retreat, and so he hits the monkey with all his might. One blow from him was enough to break his limb. Of course, it was very painful, and the gorilla screamed at the top of his lungs. Like any living creature, she will resist, even against such a stubborn enemy as he. The monkey grabbed him by the shoulder and threw him to the ground to finish him off once and for all. But the guy doesn't give up and kicks her hard in the jaw, so hard that some of her teeth crack. Our hero watches this battle with excitement, and it looks like the Monkey King is losing, which upsets him very much. And since it came to that, he thought, why not help him? He began to throw small stones under Song's feet. It seemed that they were really starting to bother him. He tried to move away, but they kept flying and flying over his bare legs. The monkey managed to land a couple more blows on him, but unfortunately that was still not enough. The bespectacled man looked at our hero with incredible anger. He doesn't like that they're interfering with him in such a serious matter now. Luo only laughed in response and asked for forgiveness, justifying himself by saying that his aim had been missed. Even in spite of everything, he continued to throw pebbles at his feet and shouted at him to be careful. Some of the ice floes began to hit him in the face, blocking his view of the battlefield. And our hero was starting to feel cheerful. He still remained at a distance and continued to mock this loser. And in the end, Song could not stand on his feet and fell to the ground. At this moment he became vulnerable, as it seemed to the monkey, and she ran up to him to strike. But even despite the current situation, he was able to pull himself together and counterattack. This blow of his was the strongest of all the previous ones. This time, he was able to pierce her body right through. Now, he paused for a few seconds to catch his breath, and slowly turned his head towards Luo. Afterwards, a wide smile began to spread across his face. Now it was his turn to repeat the fate of this monkey. When our hero saw him stomping menacingly towards him, he, with a slight hint of humor and sarcasm, asked him to talk calmly, because he considered it illogical to start a fight every time. But the bespectacled man didn't buy into his speech. He had nothing to talk about with him. He ran up to him and was about to hit him in the face. However, something went wrong. It was as if something prevented him from doing this and pulled him back. The guy began to feel that his strength was slowly fading. As the old man said, this began to bring him incredible pain and torment. He could only scream lying on the ground. Our hero sat down over him and began to mock him. He found it funny that he really wanted to kill him. He was going crazy, but he couldn't do anything. It became difficult for him to even talk. He could only lie there and make pathetic attempts to at least move his mouth. Now, the blonde can happily and victoriously take the trophies of this battle. He approached the monkey and began to examine it carefully. This was incredible prey. He found the green shell first. It could be sold for a high price. Besides, he took the fur off her. Apparently, it is also very expensive. A wide smile appeared on his face and the boy began to look for something else. And his search was crowned with success. He came across another blood crystal. It can increase strength, and there is a small chance of increasing the flame gene. It is equivalent to a treasure. The price in the warrior market is very high, and while he was looking at everything here, reinforcements had already arrived for him. This was his team. Fatso was very worried about him all this time and was the first to ask what happened here. And Jiajia began to nervously look around. And her gaze stopped on only one thing. Our hero noticed where she was looking and pointed his finger at this scoundrel, whom he covered with an expensive fur coat. The girl couldn't wrap her head around it all. She wondered how it all happened. Besides this, there was also Mr. Han, a blonde man. He approached him and asked what he was doing there. As it turned out, the task changed from the first level to the third. He thought that our hero would not cope, and therefore came to his aid when he heard that Wang Xiucheng reported that he was in danger. He rushed all the way. It seems that he worried for nothing, because he sees that the problem has already been solved. The boy wanted to tell him something, but he interrupted him. The red-haired man reminded him that the situation here was dangerous. There were a lot of high-level beasts around, and it would be logical to go back first. There was a deathly silence all around. Everyone was looking only at the one who was lying under the fur coat. The girl approached her boyfriend and she couldn't stop thinking about what had happened here and why her lover was in such a miserable state. She looked after him and saw him laughing with his friend. Soon the boys arrived at school, where an urgent meeting was held. The teacher reported to everyone that this mission was misjudged because their school made a mistake. And in addition, it put the students in danger. 5 students died on the mission, and he would bear all the responsibility. The boys felt very sad when they heard this news, but they did not say anything in response. The red-haired man still praised them all for a job well done. He was very pleased with the result of his students, and also promised to reward them. One of the girls asked what exactly it would be. The mentor said that each person will receive 200,000 yuan as initial capital, and in addition, loans will increase. During these days, they will have access to vacation. The guys will be able to have a good rest. The guys, after all this, went their separate ways, and it seems that Fatso is the happiest of all that they were given time to take a break. He grabbed his friend by the hand and ran forward as fast as he could. They entered their house, or rather began to climb the steps, and our hero still does not understand what he wants. The boys walked through the door and closed it. Xiucheng threw his phone on the bed. After that, he approached our hero and began to look into his eyes with a wide smile. It seemed that the blonde took this the wrong way and asked what he was going to do. But the fat man just laughed in response. He found the incident with the gorilla funny. His friend, with a slight smile on his face, spread his arms out to the sides. He had nothing to do with it. However, even though he wins, Xiucheng asks him to be careful. Since he is alive, his group will not let him get away with it. Of course, he wouldn't dare do anything at the school, but his group should have their trained warriors here. Next time they took on a mission, maybe his people could harm Luo. And that is why the brown-eyed man suggests that he take a rest at school and hide. It is not too late to accept the mission after he advances to the level of a normal warrior. Of course, his friend's words made him think, and that makes sense. After a pleasant conversation, the friends decided to lie down and rest. Our hero was the first to wake up. He was raised to his feet by his phone, or rather by the notification that came from it. A layout for his personal account appeared on the screen, and the amount of the deposit was also written down. The blonde was amazed that the money was transferred to his account so quickly, and he can't wait to spend it. It seems that the program hears him, and the girl recommends that he, like a normal warrior, buy a weapon that can significantly increase his combat effectiveness. And all of the listed options are quite expensive for him. All the money won't be enough? However, the girl also said that if the weapon's level is higher, it does not mean that it is better. If the warrior's genetic improvement does not meet the requirements, then the weapon will be difficult to control, or even almost impossible. And now our hero is interested in the question of what he should buy then. Given his genetic strength, the best suggestions were standard A-grade weapons, and the first one that caught his eye was the Shadow Blade. Having seen its characteristics, it now became clear to him why the others were so expensive, besides being rare and powerful. But even despite this, he still doesn't have enough money, and he decides to sell his things. The blonde asked the system to check how much all the materials he had laid out cost, and he was told a fairly large sum. Besides this, he is interested in how many points his account needs to reach the next level. The girl winked at him and said that in order to cross the bar, he needed to get another 100 points. He pointed to the bag of materials and asked how much he could get if he sold them all to the accounting center. There were as many as 520 of them, and selling them would be the best decision. Literally a couple of seconds later, there was a knock on his door. These are the people who have come to do this, and our hero greeted them joyfully. The guys began to examine everything carefully, every detail. Soon their examination was finished. They stood up and looked at him with a wide smile. And what amazed Luo even more was that one of the teachers was able to put all the objects into a small box that was the size of a palm. It turns out that this is a space container that uses space folding technology and is designed to load things, but this is the lowest level. And the guys have already credited the payment to his account, and soon he received a notification. The boy jumped into bed and without hesitation bought himself a shadow blade. They promised to deliver it to him within half a day. He fell back onto the pillow and was very happy with his purchase. He would never have thought that this would be exactly what he would have at his disposal. His account is still not empty, and he is thinking about what he can get for himself. The girl again advised him to buy special herbs or blood crystals, as well as buying weapons. The most important thing is to choose the right gene for improvement. Our hero is glad that he now has wind steps, which increase his speed. He knows very well the advantages of the Shadow Blade, which is the fast attack. If he can increase the speed coefficient, the effects of the indicators will increase. And that is why he chose to develop the speed genes. Suddenly, his thoughts and purchases were interrupted by a knock at the door. He received a parcel. Opening the doors, our hero saw a girl who brought him a small box. The boy sat down at the computer and began to examine it carefully. This is what he ordered. He received a well-packaged injection that needed to be injected into his arm. A very strange feeling began to appear in her. Her veins turned blue, and her hand began to burn. However, after he kneaded it with it, everything fell into place. As soon as the boy rose from the chair, he noticed that his weight became much lighter. His limbs moved much faster. He had never felt such lightness. A notification appeared in the system that its speed is now reaching 1000%. However, he just stopped and noticed that his numbers had dropped another 100. This made him a little wary, but after a couple of seconds, everything returned to its place. He didn't quite understand what was going on here and was a little confused. Luo still decided to lie down and rest, tidy himself up, and then try again a little later. And only after a couple of minutes he realized that while he was calm, his genes could be hidden. But if his mood became unstable, they would open up, and he would be incredibly happy with his purchase. Suddenly, his thoughts were interrupted by his girlfriend, who had already managed to imagine that he was spending time with other girls. To which our hero laughed, because he always only messes around with guys. Shin took his joke too seriously and expressed the need to correct his orientation. The blonde just sighed heavily and asked where she was so that he could come to her. It seemed that his girlfriend was not far from him, near his dorm. In order not to waste time, the boy began to slowly descend towards her, while she kicked the stones. Soon her friend appeared on the horizon and happily greeted his girlfriend. She ran up to him and grabbed him by the shirt. She was still haunted by the thought that he might be devoting time to someone else besides her. The guy just laughed and said that he didn't even have time for her. And even more so, he couldn't find anyone else. From the pleasant words. She even blushed slightly but did not stop tugging at him. But he perhaps said this to hundreds of girls. But then her mood changed dramatically. She remembered her friend Jiajia. Hearing her name, Luo also became serious and looked at her with interest. The green-eyed girl told him that she came to see her yesterday. The guy interrupted her and asked what she said. Perhaps she wanted her to stay away from him. But this is not true at all. In fact, the girl apologized to her yesterday. Of course, our hero did not expect such a turn of events. She added that she said that she should not have spoken to her like that. Perhaps she would like to improve relations with her again. Our hero stroked his friend on the head. He sincerely believes that Jiajia does not treat her badly. Hearing that she shouldn't take him into account made her feel much better. She expected that perhaps her friend would be angry with her. In addition, the blonde said that in a few days they were going to a reception for high school students. She was returning to pick up an expedition group at school to hunt animals. Hearing this, our hero was slightly speechless. The guy stroked her head and asked her not to inflate her ego. She was only 16, to which she just laughed. She wasn't going to seek her death there, but it looked like a couple of students might take part in the test, and the teachers would also be accompanying her, so there wouldn't be any safety issues. And so, she suggested to her friend to go together. Jiajia gave her 2 whole passes. This is a very tempting offer for our hero. If they can get there, they can not only see an explosive improvement in their ability, but also track down a high-level exotic beast. This is a very rare opportunity. After thinking it over carefully, the boy finally agreed. This was where their pleasant conversation ended, as Shin was in a great hurry to get to a lecture on warrior combat tactics. And then, our hero received a call on his phone. It was the old man Luo had saved, and he was very surprised that he was able to get his number. Grandfather said that he is a student of Haiban University of Genetics, and that is why he can get it by asking anyone. Seeing how awkward he felt, he cleared his throat and suggested meeting him at noon today to thank him in person for the incident. But the boy felt a little awkward. He believed that saving him was his duty as a warrior. He could not do otherwise at that moment. And then the old man asked if he was the only son in the family. He didn't understand why there was such a question, but he still decided to tell that his parents died when he was still little. Grandfather began to think, he may be an orphan, but he is much more persistent than me and the others. He has high endurance at such an early age, and now he is interested in how old he is now. The blonde told him when he was born, but he himself began to have suspicions that he really wanted to introduce him to his granddaughter. Everything really began to point to this. Grandfather had already calculated that he was now 17. The boy laughed slightly but still decided to clarify why such strange questions. And at that moment, everything became clear to him. He asked if he had a girlfriend, hinting that he had a granddaughter. Luo felt awkward about this, and in order to quickly end this conversation, he pretended that he was having serious communication problems. After he hung up, he was surprised that he actually got through to him just to propose. The old man himself is now undergoing treatment in the hospital, under IV drips. A guest came to him and asked how everything went, to which the grandfather laughed and said that the boy had enough courage to hang up. But now it's time to get down to business. He asked his friend Wen Zhong to investigate the case, and it's important for him to know how everything is going. The man told him about this student, about his initial genetic strength and other details. In addition, he shared that this boy was involved in a conflict with Song, his group. They intend to let him off the hook. It is quite possible that he will face punishment due to the fact that he violated the school rules and hurt the student. Grandpa was angered by just the mention of them. He still hadn't gotten even with them. Meanwhile, soon our hero was given his shadow sword. It's quite long and the guy can't wait to test it out. For a little warm-up, the young man chose opponents that weren't the strongest, and all in order to see what makes this blade so powerful. He takes a run-up and delivers his first blows to the training figures. The robots are also skilled in wielding their blades, but Luo deftly dodges them all. They attack him from all sides and the boy somehow manages to fight back. However, this does not present much difficulty for him. He manages to knock their heads off their shoulders. But even so, these robots can move despite the lack of a head. The blonde strikes him again in exactly the same way and stops abruptly. It seems he succeeded this time. A forced smile appears on his face. As soon as one of them was able to ask for it, while Luo crouched down to pick up the blade, it was as if he was hooked. After a couple of seconds, this statue disappeared as if nothing had happened. For him, this is, of course, very tough. He is afraid that if he really encounters two enemy warriors who have advanced skills, then he will be in trouble, and therefore he needs to train. So a whole week passed. Our hero tried hard to achieve good results. His speed of movement and reaction had clearly improved, which was noticeable. The boy has already managed to get his hand in very well and can hit several targets at once. His friend watched his skill closely and was very proud of him. He would like to be taught this trick too. Our hero tried to explain to his friend that the most important thing in his move, which he had just shown, was to attack by surprise. Perhaps for a fat man this sounds a little difficult. Finally, Luo gives him advice to reach 800% genetic strength and acquire a shadow blade. His friend will only be able to understand everything after that. During the break, the blonde man, drinking water, shared that he felt like the genes in his body were mutating, as if progressing. Shucheng, hearing that his comrade was going to grow again, was a little upset because he felt that he was lagging behind him and he was a little uncomfortable. Our hero just laughed and admitted that in reality the speed of his progress was not that fast, if compared with the other two students. Before he could finish speaking, Fatso interrupted him and asked him to stop discussing this. He was hurt and upset just by the realization of how weak he was. The blonde patted him on the shoulder. He sincerely believes that this young warrior's time will come. He just needs to find his own path, and when he does, he will definitely not lag behind the other guys. Suddenly, their pleasant conversation was interrupted by some man who came to their gym. He asked if he was mistaken that Luo was standing in front of him now, and he introduced himself as a warrior of the Divine Alliance. The fat man recognized him immediately. He knew Wen Zhongwan well. The bespectacled boy praised the boy Zato, because he is so young, but smarter than the others, and he also has good skills in hiding his emotions and feelings, and Luo doesn't seem to be thrilled about his visit. It's as if he doesn't care. He's only interested in the purpose for which they were looking for him. Suddenly, the bespectacled man came up with an interesting proposal. Namely, he suggested that the guys join the Warriors of the Divine. Fat Man was the first to appreciate this idea. He always wanted to get there, just like the other warrior. Of course, this is a very tempting offer. Our hero needs time to think everything over. But the only thing that is unclear to him now is why he is being invited here. Because the Warriors of the Divine Alliance have quite high standards for newcomers. Glasses told him that, as it turned out, there were some exceptions, which Luo allegedly fell under when he showed up to carry out the mission last time. Fatso already knows that he needs to sign a contract in order to join, and he is also interested in what benefits they have for him. The man claims that if he joins the alliance, he will have full access to the Warriors' initial fund of approximately 1 million yuan. However, in addition to this, based on their results, the alliance members are looking forward to the upcoming prospects, and therefore they will give an additional 500,000. Of course, upon hearing about such a sum, the fat man's eyes darted around with joy. But our hero is still not sure about this, and therefore asks to give him a little time to think everything over carefully. And he himself was already beginning to guess. And what if, since the Warriors of the Divine Alliance began searching for newcomers, then perhaps others did too? The fat man was very surprised. He did not expect that in order to make such a wonderful decision he still needed to think. The man took our hero aside and warned that this issue could not be postponed for too long. Glasses told him that he insulted Song's group, and they had already taken action against him. In addition, the school was planning to expel Luo. However, even despite these troubles, he asked them to believe that they think of him as an uncut diamond. And that is why they left them this time. And besides that, it's important to note that they won't give up. If this happens next time, the Alliance will have no reason to help him. If our hero joins, then these people will think carefully before deciding what to do against him again. And after these words, the boy still decided to agree and sign the contract. He was given the necessary papers, and the man smiled amiably at the end. So about 2 days passed. Nothing interesting happened. As always, our hero and Shin gathered at the school cafeteria to have a snack. The girl shared her small amount of food with him. She wants him to eat more, because that way he will look much more beautiful. The boy just laughed in response and stroked her head sweetly. She began to examine herself and said that she wanted to stay in shape, because lately she had been eating too much, so much so that she couldn't train. And you could tell that her cheeks had gotten bigger. The blonde also jokingly reminded that she had not done any physical activity at all, but had only been lying in the corner and enjoying the warm sun, which made the girl slightly angry. The brunette told me what was troubling her. In the last few days, it seemed to her that she was progressing, but she always found herself at a critical point and could not feel the breakthroughs. Perhaps she was not getting enough grass in her diet as support. Our hero doesn't quite understand how to react to this. This is the first time he's heard about it. And then, an idea came to him. He asked his girlfriend to close her eyes for a while, and she obediently did so. The boy carefully took something out of his pocket and handed it to her. Shin was very surprised when she saw the beast's blood. Crystal. The girl was delighted and asked where he had managed to get it, and how it turned out that it belonged to the fiery Monkey King, and also shared its properties. The green-eyed girl was a little confused. It seemed to her that it would be useless, since it was unlikely that she would ever have the opportunity to use it in practice. Is she really refusing it? Even though it was a gift from her best friend, the guy put his hand on it. The girl only smiled in response. Tears of joy appeared in her eyes. She was very happy, and therefore she was not going to reject him. Soon their little snack was over. The guys left their place in the canteen and were about to leave. However, out of nowhere, a strange man appeared, and it seems like he is looking for Luo. The young man did not hide his identity and said directly that he was the one, and he also became interested in what was going on. The unknown person introduced himself as a person from the university's investigation team and said that they suspected him of deliberately attacking the warrior and would like to hear a response to the offer of cooperation in the investigation. The jock grabbed the guy by the shoulder and was about to drag him along. However, the girl ran up to him. Shin couldn't allow her friend to be attacked just like that, and she abruptly threw the stranger's hand away. She thinks that there was some kind of misunderstanding. She can't believe his words and thinks that it's a mistake. However, the man asked not to interfere and put his hands in front of him. A barrier formed around and there was a loud crash. Some tables and benches fell. Some students almost fell off their feet. Others began to observe what had just happened, and some had already guessed that Huang Long was standing in front of them. But no one understood why he was here. The boys started whispering among themselves. and one of them said that the man was one of the school's disciplinary investigations department. This man also yelled at Shin for publicly interfering with the investigation department. Our hero stood up for her and said that this matter had nothing to do with her. The jock sarcastically pretended to believe him but looked away. The blonde told him that this girl was Mr. Zhao Wu's student, and that she really had nothing to do with it. He began to remember that he should not continue to blacklist this person, and therefore he suggested that our hero act smartly. After the school investigates his actions and he comes out clean, then only then there will be no problems. The green-eyed one also listened to all this and asked him not to go there, because the school's investigative team would do everything unreasonably and make him look guilty. The boy hugged her and stroked her head. He promised to be more careful. He just needed to cooperate with their investigation. Nothing more. Finally, Luo turned to him and agreed to go. The man just sighed heavily. He couldn't believe that he hadn't realized his situation earlier, and was there really a need to present himself in such a light? And so he mentally asked him to just wait. After he got around, he would find out what it would be like. Meanwhile, after that unpleasant incident with the Monkey King, the bespectacled man was admitted to the hospital. He was under the supervision of doctors, but also visited his father and often resented him, demanding revenge for him. Dad seemed to be a very important person, and he had already reminded him more than once that this young man was a student at Haiban Genetics University. This means that if he sends warriors from the corporation after his head, then the school itself will come to their door. Their entire song organization will be in serious trouble. However, even despite this, the bespectacled man is not going to back down. He cannot just leave it like that, because his son has become a laughingstock for a person like him. His father asked him not to worry about it, because he had already connected with this case. There was a teacher at the university who was in his debt, and he had asked him to investigate Luo's case. And in the end, if everything turns out as Daddy expected, then he will be expelled, and then he can be dealt with in any way that we not only want. And it seems that after these words, Song's eyes lit up with joy. But their pleasant conversation was interrupted by his people. The very first person his dad saw was Huang Long, a man already in anticipation of good news. But surprisingly, he remained silent, and others wondered who Song Jae was here. The answer was not long in coming. The boy was a little scared, but still gave his name. One of the men stated that he was the one suspected of attacking other warriors during the rescue mission, and now he should cooperate with their investigations. He fell off his crutches and asked his father to help him. He doesn't want to go there with all his soul. Other law enforcement officials without the National Martial Arts Regulatory Bureau's state approval were asked to comply with the law. The teacher stood and looked at his old friend, and at his request, the father asked his son to cooperate with their investigation and go with these people. Even despite his father's request, the bespectacled man continued to resist, but it was no longer of any use. Several people grabbed him by the arms. When everyone left, the boy's dad approached Huang Long and asked what was really going on here. After all, they had agreed to investigate Luo's case or exclude him. And now he didn't understand how people from the Martial Arts Regulatory Bureau got here. But before arguing, the man decided to ask what kind of past the person he wanted to deal with this time had. The thing is that his friend has a huge problem now. Even the Martial Arts Management Bureau is here. And as it turns out, it wasn't him who brought them here. The old man shared that he had already conducted a very thorough investigation into him. But they still think that he is an ordinary guy without any special powers. And could he really bring these people from the Bureau here? Speculation also began to circulate that perhaps someone was behind this. Perhaps someone had asked them for a favor. Father Song's head was already starting to hurt from all this unpleasant news, and he wanted to understand what he should do now. And the only advice he was given was to go and beg for mercy from the guy himself. Meanwhile, our hero had already gathered with his friend Wang and sincerely thanked him. If it weren't for his help, he wouldn't even know when the investigation into him would end. The man only smiled at him in response. And in fact, he didn't expect the Song Corporation to be so stubborn. It turns out that they don't care about their alliance. He also saw a little panic on the student's face and asked him to calm down, because the people from the Investigation Bureau are animals, and they will finish in a couple of hours. Our hero only smiled at him in response and thanked him. And since Song Group wants to play, why not do it big? The bespectacled man reported that they had made this public, and an investigation would begin soon. The man reported that his classmate Song Jae had already arrived at the scene, and then the boys heard someone's footsteps behind them and turned around out of curiosity. The man in uniform began to slowly approach our hero, and his hand reached for his cap. He took off his headdress, And when he saw Luo, his eyes sparkled with joy. The man asked why Chin Yang was late this time. While sipping his favorite coffee, he told me that the bureau was shorthanded and that he had just sorted out a case between soldiers. After that, he said that he heard from Wang that our hero was able to deal with the fiery Monkey King at such a young age, and also praised him for his high talent, and also offered him a job at the bureau. Glasses came closer to him and asked him to watch his language more carefully because this student had already joined their alliance. In any case, Chin asked our hero not to worry. He is just randomly asking questions now. They still need to go through this process. This small survey did not take long, only 15 minutes. The brunette already understood all the details and allowed our hero to leave the building. His friend is also interested in what the final result will be. The brunette asked them to come to him, because this is a secret, and he himself said that our hero has already proven his innocence. But it looks like Song Jae is in big trouble. He may even face a 10-year prison term. However, the bespectacled man believes that this is very little. He may even receive a death sentence for such actions. But this is very unlikely because the Song group has already spent a lot of money on establishing communications, and therefore they are allowed to set a maximum of 20 years behind bars. From this, we can already begin to make assumptions that his group itself will soon come to our hero and begin to ask for mercy. However, Luo It is not entirely clear why this is necessary, and as it turns out, if they can get their forgiveness, their term will be cut in half, and he will be released in 5 years, and to forgive him or not, this is only the decision of our hero. The boy just smiled in response and thanked him for such a detailed explanation. And then he was distracted by a phone call. Song Jae's father himself calls him and expresses a sincere desire to discuss something with him. The man in the cap only wanted to pour himself some coffee, but the bespectacled man stopped him and said that since he was already here, he would need to be present at these negotiations in any case. And the next time, the guys agreed that our hero would treat him to lunch. Soon, Song's warriors arrived at their place, each with one of the weapons. The men began to examine the room where their further conversations would take place. Wang assumed they were trying to intimidate him. There were 3 average A-level warriors and 1 advanced one. The blonde turned his gaze towards them and began to examine them with interest. One of them began his speech, or rather, the father of the victim himself. These 4 people are the military of the Bloodblade Martial Arts Club, and she was already starting to get closer to the point. The purpose of their visit is that they want to talk specifically with Luo about the issue that is related to the implementation of the previous mission. The boy looked at him with a slightly uncomprehending look and only raised an eyebrow, and he became more interested in what they wanted to talk about. When a good atmosphere was finally set up, the father began to talk to our hero. He believes that they are on Odnoklasniki after all, and they should become friends, and also expressed hope that he will be able to sign a letter of agreement. The blonde looked at him slightly askance and asked what bad thing he had done now. It seemed to him that too much was being asked of him after everything that had happened. Of course, as they said, they are not asking him to sign a letter of agreement without any compensation. He promised to pay 500,000 personally and asked if he liked it. But it seems that Luo is not satisfied. He turned to his friend Wang and asked him not to waste time on them. One of the Song members just gritted his teeth in dissatisfaction. It looks like this conversation won't be easy. The one-eyed man began to insist that he agree to what was now being offered to him. However, the blonde is not going to back down, whether his stomach will digest it. It is only his business. He asks for 5 million to agree to the agreement. When everyone heard his demands, their eyes almost popped out of their heads. The bespectacled man's father was categorically against it. Our hero began to think logically. If he signed the letter of consent, then Song Jae's prison term would be reduced by at least half, and 1 year equals 1 million. If you calculate, they will still get a profit. Of course, even this arrangement did not please anyone. The bald man slammed his palm on the table in displeasure. One-eyed was also not himself, and he asked not to take on too much, calling our hero arrogant. Suddenly, he was interrupted. The man asked where he got so much courage to threaten someone from the alliance of gods of warriors, which only made him raise an eyebrow. The man in the white shirt introduced himself as Wang Wenzhong and began to closely examine all the participants. It seems that his name is very familiar to the one-eyed guy. He was very surprised to hear about it. As it turned out, this man killed a beast that would never come to an end. And it all happened during the outbreak of beasts that year. And Van himself was very surprised. He could not even imagine that there were people who remembered his nickname. The man stood up for our hero and said that the sum of 5 million was quite adequate. The guy with the bandage on his head turned to the bloody hand. referring to the fact that now are not those times. He asked to take a step back. He is ready to give up 3. This is his last offer. Our hero interrupted their conversation and still agreed to his conditions. However, he also demanded a bottle of diluted elixir of rebirth. And this is the final decision. In that case, the blind man in one eye decided that they had nothing to talk about. They promised not to forget this insult, and he promised to take revenge for Song's term. Suddenly, Yang, who was lying next to him on the bed, heard someone threatening his friend and looked at the offender with displeasure. The cheeky guy made a displeased face. He didn't like that some stranger was interfering in their dialogue. The dark-haired man sat down on his comfortable sofa and introduced himself, asking for his name. He smiled widely and stated that Luo was his best friend and also told a little about himself, his worst trait being calming down rude people. Song's father looked at him closely, and he immediately realized that he was a man from the Martial Arts Regulatory Bureau. Hearing this, the blind man's mood immediately changed. Today was some kind of bad day for him. Longhair just laughed. He couldn't believe that people recognized a person like him, but he confirmed that he was from there. All of Song's allies suddenly fell silent, their faces devoid of any joy or any other emotion other than anger. Adjusting his cap, Young told what he had heard about the bloodshed. I wonder who he wanted to kill there. The one-eyed man tried to force a smile. He said that there was nothing like that. After all warriors are one single family. It is very good to live in peace and harmony with each other. And then, Yang asked what the final result of their negotiations was, which made the men hesitate. He rose from the comfortable sofa and said that it was okay if they did not reach mutual agreement. Someone recently seemed to have threatened the warrior, and now he was going to conduct a little investigation here. The man with the scar on his eye began to twitch nervously and asked only to talk calmly. The bespectacled man's father finally agreed to our hero's terms and is about to make the deal. In order for everything to go well, more people came to them who would control this process. In front of everyone, the father of the wounded son handed him a suitcase with money, and the necessary agreement was also signed. Our hero looked through everything and was given another suitcase that needed to be checked. He took out the ampule from there and examined it carefully, and also thanked his brother Wang for such sincere help. He would like to thank him at least somehow, and he decided to give him this elixir. But his friend refused because by right, it does not belong to him. The man is not going to accept any thanks. He is not that kind of person. But he is sincerely glad that he was able to help. Besides this, Luo thinks that he should also thank Yan, since they are friends after all. But it seems that Yan is also taking this lightly. Van summed up a little. Now our hero has as much as 3 million. This will significantly increase his strength. However, he still does not advise the guy to buy armor. The blonde became curious about why this was so, and he also decided to inquire what would be the best thing to buy in such a case. Gray Eyes gives him a little advice. At the initial stage, it is easy to rely on armor. However, he recommends first to acquire some herbs that can increase his speed and strength. And this sounds quite logical. Yan heard their dialogue and, in a slightly playful but indignant tone, asked why he hadn't advised him to do this when he was training. A few minutes of pleasant conversation flew by too quickly. It was time to leave. The long-haired man had some public business to do, and therefore he was in a hurry. And finally, he winked at our hero and reminded him that he owed him lunch. So a week passed. Nothing special happened. Luo still tried to train diligently and improve his skills. As always, his targets were artificial robots, which this time threw shurikens. During all this time, the boy's skills and technique of ball control have already improved, which makes him very happy. However, his strength has increased a little, but he still constantly feels like he needs some kind of push. It's time for him to come out already. His girlfriend was already waiting for him, and she was very worried about him. He was too late. Only after her message did the boy remember that he had promised to go with Shin to the welcoming party for the student's older sister, and in order not to be late, he had to try hard. He rushed towards her as fast as he could. The girl was already sitting on a bench in the park. She found a very good spot in the shade, away from the scorching sun. The blonde was very worried about being late, and literally a minute later he arrived at the place. The brunette was already tired of waiting for him. She dropped her head and said that everything would start soon, and it would be very unpleasant if they didn't have time to enter. His friend handed him an invitation card, and our hero began to run his fingers through his hair and apologize for being late. Suddenly, he noticed that he was not wearing formal clothes, and it seemed to him that it would be a little awkward and uncultured. Shin just laughed in response. Does her friend really care about his appearance and again began to tease him for wanting to please some other girl? No matter how our hero tried to talk himself out of it, the girl still stood her ground. She had heard that some girl had managed to become interested in him. With a slight hint of jealousy, the girl looked away, hinting that he had better act now while he had the chance. Her little trick worked. She noticed how his eyes lit up and lightly kicked him in the knee. The boy felt a little uneasy and just sighed heavily. How cunning his girlfriend really is. After a short, cheerful conversation, the guys went inside the building where the service staff was already serving food. The very first person they saw was Jiaja. Today, she made a great effort to tidy herself up. She had on very beautiful bright makeup and a chic, luxurious dress that attracted the attention of many guys. She was very happy to see her friend Shin. The girls hugged and greeted each other. Other men looked at this beautiful lady. Some were even speechless. She is simply perfect. She herself looked at our hero. She would like him to notice that she never lacks attention from the opposite sex. For her to get it is as easy as pie. But Luo stood to the side and just glanced at her. You could tell from his look that he didn't give a damn about her. Of course, this hurt the brown-eyed girl, especially her pride. She expected compliments and admiration from him. To hide how irritated she was now, she talked to her friend. She suggested going to her friends together and getting to know them. Soon they arrived too. They were two guys who had just entered the building. One of them hugged her when they met and asked who was standing next to her. The blonde hugged her friend and introduced her. She said that they are very close friends and literally grew up together. The long-haired, handsome man introduced himself. His name was Shimon, and it seemed like he also had a girlfriend that he would like to introduce her to. Shin slightly lowered her gaze to the floor and said in a slightly nervous voice that she did not come alone, but with her friend. The blonde was still trying to persuade her to go with her. This was a unique opportunity. She narrowed her eyes and asked if she would refuse it. Our hero only laughed in response, interrupting their conversation. He suggested that they simply go for a walk on their own without the girls. His girlfriend, as always, began to be naughty. She gave him an ultimatum. Either they go together, or she will go back. Shimon watched everything from the side and only smiled. His friend patted him on the shoulder and introduced our hero, telling him that the guy was a former partner of Jiaja. The blonde looked at him from under his forehead. Now everything became clear to him, and he still suggested that he go together. He hugged his long-haired girlfriend and stepped aside, while Shin walked up to Luo. The other guys from Shimon's company began to discuss him with light ridicule, but the green-eyed girl was not laughing at all. She was offended to hear such things about her friend. She whispered in his ear, suggesting that they leave here, but it seems that the blue-eyed atmosphere did not bother him at all. He offered to stay. Why should he leave so early? To make sure she calmed down, the boy repeated for the umpteenth time that he was completely finished, and therefore there was nothing to worry about. This woman was no longer anyone to him. The brunette approached her friend and tried to join the group, laughing sweetly. But a little later, Jiaja decided to approach our hero and said that she wanted to have a serious talk with him. This time she was incredibly angry at him. She admits his abilities and techniques are incredible, but she views her Shin as a sister, and therefore does not want the disagreements between them to have any effect on her. Even despite her explanation, the blonde still didn't understand what she was trying to achieve now. The girl only sighed heavily in response and turned her face to the side. After a few seconds, she looked him straight in the eye and asked him if he knew how many high-ranking warriors the Li family had and many other things. The guy didn't even bat an eye at her nonsense and asked what she was going to do now. This time, the brown-eyed girl told him directly that he couldn't help his friend in any way. Only the warrior king was suitable for her. However, even despite all this, her head was filled only with him, and she was worried that perhaps Luo was keeping her near him by force. The boy stood up from his seat and sincerely said that he never forced her to be with him, and also promised to remember her words. What if this warrior king is surpassed by someone, for example? He promised that soon she will understand that what she is now so proud of means absolutely nothing to him. After that, he had nothing more to say. He simply turned away from Jiaja, and she was indignant at him. She thought that he had grown up and looked at him completely differently. However, she couldn't imagine that he would become so arrogant after some small achievement. But it seems that our hero doesn't care at all about her statement. The blonde still considers her ex a pathetic and naive fool. She also believes that people pity him and do not respect him at all. Meanwhile, her group was discussing Yunfei's party. It wasn't planned. It was only arranged at the request of the grandfather from the family. One of the guys said that this old man was very worried, and this time, he was sure that Shimon had a chance. The guy sincerely believed that only his personality here is incredibly suitable for the precious daughter of their family and no one else. But the blonde himself knows very well that if we put aside the question of whether she likes him, then all her suitors are strong competitors, especially this crazy guy named Hong Huang. The blonde said that only Jiajia is her favorite, and he does not at all seem like a fickle person in love. Of course, the girl became very pleased with these words, and she hugged him, blushing deeply. Our hero and his girlfriend watched this circus from the sidelines and only occasionally exchanged glances. Everything was immediately clear from their looks. The brunette whispered in his ear, laughing slightly. She was amused by Shimon's sad face. What he just said was so false that she even felt sick. Luo leaned over her and said in a quiet voice that he promised to buy her a kebab a little later. The girl again began to be naughty like a small child. She would like to eat much more. Meanwhile, while the fake couple was hugging, someone started approaching them. It was a tall, muscular guy with a ragged haircut and luxurious hair. He asked what was going on here. It seems that the men have known each other for a long time. Shimon and Mr. Chu have not seen each other for quite some time. The other guys also greeted him, but with a slightly trembling voice. They didn't expect that he would become so attractive during this time. The man said that he simply overheard some people chatting and became curious about who the guy was who was said to be a great match for the Yun family's daughter. Seeing that Shimon was becoming a little worried, he asked him to relax, because he was just asking. Everyone was participating in a fair competition, and his gaze fell on Jiajia. He really liked his appearance and wanted to touch her. But the girl was very scared, and the blonde himself tried to justify him, saying that it was just a joke. She only smiled in response, although she herself was seriously scared. It was hard for her to wrap her head around it. She was his girlfriend. She was experiencing such an insult, and he was bending over backwards and couldn't even protect her. Her friend also observed, she considers this man a real animal, and her boyfriend a coward. Chu approached his friend and reminded him that last time his father did not want to buy the warrior gene transformation potion. He felt a little ashamed, and the blonde began to justify himself by saying that the price was currently too high, about 8 million. But it seems that the master understands that not everyone has the resources to become a modified warrior. It would be a dream to reach the expert level by relying only on medicine. Hearing about this, the blonde asked his girlfriend what this potion was. It seems that Jin has heard about it. She said that it is a medicine that will help increase the chance of activating the genetic potential of a warrior. And looking at this man's behavior, she feels very uncomfortable. Even though he has a potion, warriors improve themselves through hard training and perseverance. And this man is simply worthless. Her friend Jiajia noticed her aggressive outbursts of anger and looked at her in confusion. Everyone else who was nearby thought she was crazy. She dared to provoke the son of the Chu family, which controlled the majority of the shares of factories in all of Haiban and had thousands of warriors. The blonde got angry at her and demanded that she shut up, and before that, asked the gentleman for forgiveness. However, she doesn't see the point in doing this. Why would she need it if he is behaving inappropriately? The brown-eyed girl covered her mouth with her hand and asked the tall guy for forgiveness, citing the fact that her friend had just entered school and did not know the rules. He approached her and hinted that he would do this only on one condition, which the girl did not like. He should have noted her courage. However, in his subjective opinion, she lacks obedience training, and therefore he wants to teach her a couple of lessons. Unexpectedly for Shin, Jiajia still stood up for her, citing the fact that she was still little, but it seems like he doesn't care about any of this. Seeing his aggressive behavior, the blonde turned to her boyfriend Shimon, but he just turned away and did not want to react to it in any way. She can't believe that her lover is such a wimp, and she tried to at least somehow establish contact with him. But it seems that the opinion of this inadequate man was above all else for him, and he hit his girlfriend in the face. The blow was so strong that she fell to the ground, clutching her cheek. The man with the ragged haircut approached the offender and pushed him aside. And now his target is Jin. He still hasn't given up on the idea of teaching her a couple of lessons. However, she is not a simpleton, and will not give in to his threats so easily. She confidently hits him in the chest in response. Luo approaches them, and Jiajia somehow finds the strength to get to her feet and stands next to him. Xin decided to hide behind his back. She still trusts him and feels safe. The man looked at the new character with interest and asked who he was. Our hero glanced at Shimin and then back at Mr. Chu. He was very ashamed of him because losing his composure in front of a woman was the only thing he was capable of. The men who were standing nearby began to actively discuss him so that he would not hear. They all heard perfectly well how he had completed the task last time. Some even knew that he had received a few achievements. A no longer knows his place, his arrogance is off the charts. There were also those who were amazed by his confidence and persistence. It was unlikely that he would be able to resist the master anyway. However, Jiajia decided to retreat and hid behind our hero. She asked him what he was doing. He didn't seem to understand what he was getting himself into. And from this whole picture, Mr. Chu felt very funny. He couldn't even hold back his laughter. He doesn't give a damn who this person is. He just wants him to stop breathing today. And that is why he ran up to him very quickly and swung his fist, intending to hit him. In the eyes of others, he looked confident, and the blonde was very afraid for him. She had told him that sooner or later his naivety would destroy him. However, our hero's face didn't show that he was scared. The fist was already a couple of centimeters away from him, and it was at this moment, just as he had trained with the robots in the training room, that he managed to deftly dodge. It all happened so quickly that the other visitors did not have time to follow him. Literally a second, and he found himself behind his opponent. He doesn't want to cause him any serious harm, so he decided to just spank him. The bully jumped back from him and grabbed his shoulder. His friends couldn't follow his movements and didn't understand what had just happened. The blonde was also shocked by what she saw. She just stood and looked at the two of them. She and the other guys can't believe that a member of the Chu family would lose to some guy. Even despite what just happened, the stubborn blue-eyed one is not going to back down. He still promises to make him bow down before him and beg for mercy. But just in the midst of the battle, Grandfather Yun showed up to see them, and the boys had to stop. Everyone was very happy to see him. A wide smile appeared on the faces of the boys and girls. He is very popular here. Shin looked at him carefully. His face seemed very familiar to her. She had definitely seen him somewhere before, and her tall friend immediately understood who she was dealing with. This was the same old man they had saved during the mission. It was very hard to believe. It seems that this man is very powerful. Otherwise, why do so many people admire him? He is very famous for creating the Warrior Energy Potion, which saved countless warriors' lives, as well as the Elixir of Rebirth. Hearing this, our hero began to examine it carefully. Now it is clear whose work this is. The blonde stared at him. She was very sorry that there was only one daughter in his family, and she would like to have a son. The old man was surrounded by a lot of attention, and he also didn't forget to wave his hand to the others. The brown-eyed girl was delighted, and she was very pleased that they had not forgotten about her. Now, she wants to show herself in her best form, and therefore carefully adjusts her hair and clothes. With a wide smile, she wanted to take the initiative and greet him. But it seems that he is absolutely not interested in her. The old man approached our hero and began to smile broadly at him. The boy called him an ordinary grandfather, and the other kids' eyes almost popped out of their heads from what they heard. Some even yelled at him because he didn't show a drop of respect for him. One man approached the old man and asked him not to be angry because this student had said some offensive words, and it would be the responsibility of their school. However, Yun doesn't seem to care at all. He wants to talk to Luo alone. He remembers that time when he suddenly hung up and didn't answer the phone. Now finally he won't run away anywhere. He was caught. Chu began to look at him intently. He became very interested in what it was about this guy that this old man respected and even blessed him. As it turned out, Grandpa was still grateful to him for saving him that day, and he was very sorry that he never had the opportunity to thank him properly. The blonde just laughed and repeated for the umpteenth time that for him this was nothing. It was a warrior's duty. The others were shocked by their conversations. Grandpa took him by the hand and asked him not to run away this time. He still feels indebted to him and wants to personally express his gratitude. This time, Luo still wanted to try to at least make an excuse that he had some important things to do. And then he remembered that ignoramus wanted him to beg for mercy on his knees. But as events unfolded, now Chu himself is doing it. He had to overcome his pride, and gritting his teeth, he tried to normally express regret and ask for forgiveness for his behavior and rudeness. Everyone around was shocked that he was capable of such a thing. But it seems that this is not enough. The boy continues to put a little pressure on him. For the long-haired one, this is already a disgrace. He is already starting to get irritated by the fact that he still needs something. The blonde glanced at his friend and politely asked her to apologize to Shin, who was standing to the side. The man approached her and, in a slightly confused voice and with a hint of displeasure, admitted that he had not been himself. He slightly dressed up in his jacket and found an immortal herb that has a considerable value. He is ready to give it to her just like that for all the inconvenience and troubles caused. Now, in theory, the guys are even. No one owes anyone anything and no one holds a grudge against anyone. They met with their eyes and only smiled. But of course, our hero understands perfectly well that this is not the end, and he will wait for his revenge. The man just gritted his teeth and whispered that he would definitely return. After such a short conversation, he stepped aside. But Jia tormented herself with thoughts about how he could know Grandpa Yun. Our hero approached the old man and asked for forgiveness for keeping him waiting. But it seems that he does not take this seriously. It is absolutely normal that a skirmish occurred between young people, and besides, he now wants to quickly change the conversation. He has a couple more questions for him. The blonde tilted his head slightly to the side and asked which one it was. The old man winked at him and asked if he had a girlfriend, because he thought that since his granddaughter had returned today, this was a very good chance for them. Everyone who heard this was, to put it mildly, in shock and could not find a place for themselves. There was nowhere to go. The boy had to agree to this. But the old man did not press him, because today is the party of the young generation. He does not want to interfere anymore, and therefore asked his friend to see him off, wishing others to enjoy this evening. And he turned to Wenjong, who is accompanying him. He wants him to help him make a contract with Master Shibai. He needs him to analyze his date of birth and 8 horoscope signs for romantic fate. It was not difficult for our hero to guess that this old man had decided to marry his granddaughter to him, and this made him feel a little uneasy. Suddenly, it was announced that Mrs. Yoon had very urgent plans for the evening that could not be cancelled, and therefore she would not be able to come. And soon it was deep night. Shin began to return home with Luo, and all the time she muttered about this girl. Our hero still didn't understand why she kept repeating this, and she, it turns out, was a little jealous, and she was wondering if he was enjoying it, getting together with the precious daughter of the Yoon family. The boy just laughed and patted her on the head, saying that he wouldn't even come close to that. The girl started throwing tantrums again. She thinks that even despite these words, he still sincerely wants to meet her. This is what irritates her. But Luo took her by the cheeks and looked into her eyes and said that whoever was there, he was not interested in her. He also found it funny that she didn't have the courage to show herself. What if she's a child who has an unattractive figure? Hearing such a funny suggestion, the girl began to laugh loudly. Meanwhile, Madame herself was already standing nearby and talking to some guy. It seems that she is very upset by the opinion that our hero has formed about her, and she decided to ask again whether she understood correctly that Luo said this. She asked her uncle not to imagine anything, because she was not interested in that man at all. She was just interested in finding out what outstanding abilities he possessed. And at first glance, he was no different from the others. The man just laughed in response and agreed with her. As it turned out, her grandfather offered her this guy to join the expedition team, which is really a lot of trouble. Meanwhile, our hero continues to calm his girlfriend down, and he believes that if grandfather wants to joke, then let him joke. He cannot refuse him this. At his words, Shin blushed slightly and a slight smile began to appear on her face. After that, a strange feeling appeared in his soul, as if she had hugged him, and he melted. However, his friend began to wake him up. Our hero fell asleep very well and only continued to whisper the name of this girl. The fat man tensed up a little. It seemed that he would never understand this love. This time, he began to wake him up much more insistently. Guests came to see him. The guy with 2 colored hair introduced himself as being from the school's martial arts union, and the second one congratulated him. And after all, he was chosen as a member of the school expedition team, and that's why they came here to find out if he would be interested in such an offer. Seeing them about to leave, he tried to stop them, but the guys slammed the door and said goodbye. When it closed, the guys could hardly catch their breath. It was very close. Their secret was almost revealed. After all, it was Yun Feier who asked them not to tell him that it was she who strongly recommended him to join the team. The first thing Luo decided to do was share with his girlfriend that he might go on an expedition. After reading his message, she seemed very happy for him. From the way she worded it, one could guess that she was with him. The girl happily confirmed this and promised to follow him with a smile this time. The fat man was always next to him and noticed his saccharine correspondence, jokingly calling him a womanizer. It was time to change. While he was putting on his favorite hoodie, he asked his friend if he was going to go to the training center with him. But it seemed like today was not his day, and he just wanted to lie around with a mountain of sweets. The guy said goodbye and the blonde set off on his way. As soon as he approached his favorite door, he heard very strange sounds from there, like a segment. In order to understand what was going on there, he decided to turn on the holographic visualization and see what was going on there. There was some guy in the room who had already taken over his training area. Our hero decided to carefully observe his movements as he fights. He had 2 blades at his disposal, and he handled them very skillfully. His movements were amazing. He moves very quickly and skillfully like a real professional, deftly jumping off the walls. Skillfully, like a true professional, deftly jumps off the walls. The blonde analyzes his fighting style, and it seems like he likes it. And so, the boy swings his fist and delivers a crushing blow to one of the figures right in the face. The robot flies back. Victory remains his. And for Luo, it was just an incredible sight. He really enjoyed watching him fight. Suddenly, this guy turned to him and offered to have a battle together. He did not expect that he saw him, and froze a little. But still, he would like to get such an interesting experience, and it wouldn't hurt to compete. This man has a very interesting fighting style technique with 2 swords. Literally 1 second, and he was already next to our hero, getting ready to attack. The blonde also took out his sword and managed to block in time. They are doing quite well, so we can assume that the guys are about equal in strength. After their first skirmish, there was a small distance left between them. Our hero couldn't take his eyes off him. This guy managed to impress him, and he hid the sword. The blue-eyed man smiled back at him and introduced himself. His name is Baijan. He is a third-year university student. It was time for him to go about his business, but he expressed the hope that he would be able to cooperate in the upcoming expedition. The boys didn't even notice how soon morning had come. Everyone put on their outfits, and Luo, as always, brought a gift for his friend. Shin opened it and was very surprised. This time she came across the technology of folding space. It seems to her that he does all this in order to appease her. Our hero made a slightly offensive grimace. He became interested in why she insulted him every day. And while we're at it, she'd like to know what he wants her to call him. Many students watched their childish behavior and many felt disgusted. Soon, the couple entered the building and saw a long corridor in front of them. Our hero felt some strange, powerful force. Soon Yunfei herself appeared, and her appearance caused some people to have a slight blush on their cheeks. Everyone was very happy to see her, but these 2 romantics were a little late to see her. And not only did they not stay, but also several guys. Luo was speechless after he realized that the person standing in front of him was Madame Yun herself, and the other guys recognized our hero, and everyone was jealous that her grandfather wanted to marry her to him. Seeing how the inattentive students began to whisper among themselves, the girl hissed. The guys noticed her looking at them, and they felt a little awkward. They couldn't help but just look away. And Shin, of course, was watching her friend and noticed how he was staring at this lady, and she pinched him painfully in the side. It was high time to start the main part. Yoon announced that everyone was gathered. All the boys were so engrossed in looking at this beautiful girl that they didn't notice how their teacher was sitting right on his bottom. The red-haired man jumped from his seat straight towards his students. He managed to intrigue everyone with just one phrase, that this time they were going to a level E city. In addition, the mission of this expedition group was announced, and this time it is very serious. Before this, the girl had already discovered that there is a master-level beast in this city. He is wounded, and his body contains a lot of treasures. The guys began to discuss this very actively. This creature is equal to an expert warrior. Just the thought of it horrified them. But that was not all. After the guys go there, they will no longer be students. And the most important rule, those who are afraid of death and run away before the enemy, or rather fail the mission, will be executed without discussion. Our hero didn't take this seriously. It seems to him that Mr. Khan just wants to scare them all. The man announced the beginning, and all the students nodded their heads. Half a day later, the boys had already arrived at their destination. The very first one to jump out of the train was Xin and her friend. She is incredibly happy that she can now stretch a little. Her legs are numb from sitting for such a long time. The boy just smiled at her in response, and he noticed something strange. The train derailed. It felt like it exploded inside. The windows were blown out and the hard metal itself was horribly dented. The other participants were slightly frightened and shocked by such a sight. The girl became interested in why they didn't just fly to this place by plane. Jiajia heard her questions out loud and decided to put in her 2 cents. It's not that simple here. There are a lot of flying animals on the way, and they all have their own territories, and in any case they would have been attacked. The girl was very glad that her friend was so educated and smart, and just nodded her head. The blonde looked at her ex and calmly asked him to take care of this lady. But it seems that he doesn't need to be reminded. He understands everything perfectly well himself. Seeing his calm reaction, Jiajia wrinkled her face slightly, and she found his intonation unpleasant. However, she turned around and left, and when she could no longer hear the 2 of them, Shin asked Luo why he was doing this, what had happened after all to their persuasion to hide from her. But still, Sooner or later it would have happened, and therefore he did not attach such great importance to it. It was high time to move on. To get to their destination faster, the guys decided to use transport. Everyone was having a lot of fun. The friends were chatting and laughing, and before they even noticed, they had already arrived at the place. Meanwhile, Song's gang is planning to strike at our hero and is actively discussing it. The only thing they are worried about now is that if they suddenly strike quickly and alarm the teachers at the university, then they will be in serious trouble. That's why the one-eyed one offers to take advantage of a good opportunity, because last time this boy made him lose face in front of his colleagues. However, even if they are caught, they believe that the most important thing is you, so that there is no evidence. And besides, it's unlikely that anyone will be able to do anything as a member of the Bloodblade Martial Arts Club. Moreover, Song Guojin himself paid him a considerable sum and also a bottle of the Elixir of Rebirth. Meanwhile, the guys had almost arrived at their destination, and the drivers began to turn off the engine. Mr. Han ordered everyone to get out of the car. Now they are going to walk because driving will attract the attention of the monsters. Everything must be done quietly and carefully. The guys jumped from their seats. The attentive teacher noticed that the first animals began to rush above them. They were aiming straight at our hero and another of his classmates. Luo was able to dodge the first one by doing a backflip. These rats are quite fast. One of them got into the van. They jumped quite high, but the blonde was still faster and kicked the very first one in the stomach. Yun Feier reported that it was a low-level rat. She decided to use her special attack to hit multiple targets at once, crossing her swords into a web-like formation. In order not to hurt any of the participants, the girl warned that she would now attack. Several rats got caught in a web from which they will never escape. The swords pierced them, leaving no chance for survival. Longhair told the boys what to do next. These creatures fight in groups. It is very important to beware of their claws, which contain poison. Even one small scratch could be fatal. And while she was chatting, she didn't notice how one of them had already gotten very close to her. It's a good thing our hero was nearby and was able to cut off her head in time. The other students were also trying hard. Even Mr. Chu was here. Those who remained alive and saw the battle with people began to flee. So as not to repeat their fate, one of the students reported that 2 students were injured and would be temporarily unable to fight. Upon hearing this, Teacher Han was dissatisfied. He reminded them of the instructions he had given before, that the victims should give 2 antidotes and undergo a re-evaluation after returning. It's pretty cruel, and these rules made the other kids a little wary, and they decided to be more careful. Xian approached our hero. She really didn't like these first opponents. The rats are very annoying. They don't drop anything valuable, and they also have a terribly unpleasant smell. The boys began to examine the area more closely, in order to at least get their bearings a little. After about 2 hours, they found a tall building and decided to rest under it. The students were very happy that they could finally catch their breath. The teacher reported the situation. The situation had changed a little. It was likely that they would have to stay here for a little more than 10 days. The boys started to get a little worried. They wondered why the schedule had suddenly changed. Had something really happened? As it turns out, the beast they were hunting from the very beginning is now in the pregnancy stage and is very sensitive. You need to wait for the moment when it is weak and strike. Even in such a not very pleasant situation, you can find some positives. Now is a very good chance to practice. It's time to split into groups. Some of the guys were very happy when they were added to Yun Feier's team. Unfortunately, our lovebirds will be in different places. And so, before they split up, they make promises to each other to be careful. And Jajia looked at them and just rolled her eyes in displeasure. Our hero looked at the map and reported to the manager that there were some red dots located throughout the building. From the looks of it, this should be a normal A-level beast nest. The bravest teacher is about to strike at him and rushes forward. The boy considers him to be very irresponsible. He abandoned his students and went to track down the beast alone. The boys laughed at his strange habits, but decided to follow him anyway. The blonde decided to look at the building from the outside, and it seems to him that he can easily climb up to the 5th floor on his own. Literally a couple of jumps and he was already there. It so happened that he broke the glass and already noticed his first opponent. He somehow managed to grab the bars with his hands and began to examine who was there. The boy laughed and greeted him. It was a black-scaled unicorn. Its scales were very hard, but fortunately there was a weak spot on its neck. Its cost was about 85,000. The amount is quite decent, and so he breaks ahead and is going to fight him. The landing was on a mountain of cardboard boxes, which flew everywhere, and at that moment the beast already noticed him. The unicorn was about to attack him, but Luo managed to dodge, and it turns out that his opponent crashed into the wall. He has a very thick tail, and it is clear that he has advanced fighting skills, but still, the boy is stronger. He waited for the right moment and finally managed to knock him down. And during the battle, it felt like he still lacked combat experience. After he returned home, he would need to train hard. A notification appeared in the system that the body was in a slightly damaged condition, and now its amount is approximately 60,000. From this, we can make a logical conclusion that the more intact and preserved the animal's body is, the more they will pay. He believes that this will give him enough time to practice his blade technique. The guy, like the other guys, fought for 2 days in a row, and this time, our hero came across a strong bull, quite stubborn. He almost pierced his stomach with his horns several times. This creature was the hardest to deal with. He had to land several blows to knock it down. And finally, after a short break, our hero gets to his feet and is about to leave for the next floor. It's time to take stock. He's used 3 recovery potions in the last 2 days, and he thinks the consumption is too high. Now he'll drink another one. The system also told him how much money the material from the animals he had killed recently would cost. The results pleased him very much. It seems that Luo made a fortune. Our hero began to triumphantly descend the stairs when suddenly he became wary. The boy heard someone's footsteps and asked who was there. Meanwhile, Jaja and her boyfriend were approaching the same place. The blonde stopped her, because he also heard that someone was here. It seemed that the girl had already realized who it was and was trying to stop Shimin, who was rushing with a sword. She jumped out in front of him and said that this was Luo, a participant in the test. It's very good that he stopped in time. Our hero had almost no strength left. The blonde found the wrong time to mock. He really thought from the very beginning that the monster was standing in front of him, and also began to mock his condition. The boy refused help. It was easier for him to cope on his own than to ask someone like him. Shimin reminded him that he was currently in a high-level city, and he wouldn't be able to leave here unless he had good skills. He gave Luo good advice, and as a senior disciple, he should warn him to know his place. The blonde turned to his ex and said that she had really bad taste in guys. Did she really like that? And then she froze in place. Gritting his teeth, Shimin showed off his armor. Now it becomes clear why he is not afraid of anything. He made it especially for him and prepared the sword. Luo did the same. He didn't give a damn about the state he was in now. The girl doesn't want them to fight now, but on the other hand, she is very happy with the thought that her ex still remembers her. Suddenly, their fight that was about to begin was interrupted by Yoon. She takes this mission too seriously and demands that in that case they return home. No one will care about them if they fight. The girl turned to Shimin and promised to remember today's skirmish, and she threatened him a little at the end. If she saw him provoking her again, he would definitely be in trouble. But he seemed to only care that Luo might still be infatuated with Jia. Then there were continuous threats. He seriously thinks that our hero will somehow harass her, and therefore he did not attach much importance to him. The blonde hugged his girlfriend and was about to leave, but she finally asked him to take care of himself. After the couple disappeared around the corner, Yunfei turned to Luo. She really thought his ex was disgusting and treacherous. The girl said that the words she conveyed before leaving were intended for Shimin, and it seems that she wants him to be even more jealous of our hero, thereby provoking a conflict and bringing things to a battle. She also appreciated Luo's self-confidence. She was sure that this girl must regret breaking up with him, and only now, she decided to introduce herself and said her name. She believes that because of saving her grandfather, she is indebted to him, and says that her grandfather always wanted to introduce them. The long-haired girl laughed sweetly. She had previously been worried that their meeting might be awkward, but now she really liked everything. And now it was time to get down to business. She asked how many animals he had defeated, and it turned out that the number exceeded 20. Having heard his answer, the girl is truly delighted. Now she understands her grandfather's words that he is truly an unusual person. And our hero was amazed that she tracked down about 4 dozen animals. She is very strong, and that is why he is afraid of her. His thoughts were interrupted by Yoon, who said that since he was so strong, why not do him one favor? As it turned out, she had already managed to track down a high-level beast. The reward was quite large, and if the guys could defeat it, they would receive $1 million. The fact that there is such a creature here almost made our hero's eyes pop out of his head. And if I think about it, if he cooperates with her, there shouldn't be any problems. And that is precisely why he confidently agrees. In response, the girl only laughed. She believes that he really does have what a man should have, and from that moment on, her respect for him begins to grow. Meanwhile, Shimin and her friend continued to explore the building. And according to their information, There should be many more beasts, which is very strange. The whole problem is that they don't exist. No matter how you look at them or look back, the girl had already begun to speculate that perhaps they had all been defeated by the other guys. Her boyfriend remembered about the teacher who hunted animals around the mall. He probably wants them to practice killing animals from the inside, and he definitely wouldn't do that. He even began to suspect that this was Luo Li's doing, but for some reason it was hard to believe that he was that strong. What irritated him even more was that his girlfriend seemed out of her mind after the appearance of this cute boy, to which the blonde only smiled and complimented him. She still considers him the strongest of them all. Shimin still considers himself the best, and also doubts that this guy will dare to compete with him. Soon the couple arrived at some door and noticed that there was something lying in the middle of the room. They would have to check what it was, but it looks like her boyfriend was so carried away by wanting to show how strong he was that he took out his sword and was about to attack. He wants to show him his new technique, but at that very second he freezes in place. There is a corpse of an animal lying in front of him now. The girl does not understand what happened. The boy said that this is a level A creature, more simply called a bald bull. It is quite difficult to meet, and the materials on its body are very valuable. It has no signs of life, and only now, Jiajia begins to understand that this is the work of her ex. Still, Shimin admits that he has excellent skills. However, he is sure that such a fragile guy would not be able to take down this bull alone. Seeing that his girlfriend was not herself, he decided to leave here. The boy reassured his girlfriend by saying that they would still have time to find many good animals. But after some time, their search was unsuccessful. It seems that all the monsters on the floor were tracked down by others. Now he was definitely feeling uneasy. He was already beginning to suspect that this was the work of Yunfeier, or that little kid. Suddenly, they both heard a strange rustling sound. And this time the blonde was absolutely sure that it was an animal, and was not going to let it escape from him. The guys agreed that he would go and have a look, and his girlfriend would stay put and not move. After some time, there was a deathly silence, and it became very suspicious. She decided to go to the place where he went and carefully see what was happening. Suddenly, unexpectedly, there was a loud explosion that threw her back. Here her lover appeared. He shouted at her to run away as quickly as possible. Apparently, he came across a high-level beast and he already got a scolding from it. The boy grabbed Jiajia by the hand and was about to run. They ran from the scene as fast as they could, in order to at least save their own lives and find the others. On the other side of the city, our hero and the old man's granddaughter were jumping across the roofs. They were almost there, and the first thing that caught the guy's eye was the strange smoke. Indeed, if you looked at the city from above, smoke was visible in several places. A lot of questions were popping up in both of their heads. Maybe someone had overtaken them, or something had happened. The long-haired girl jumped down from a height. She clearly remembers that when she explored last time there was nothing like this here. When the boys landed on the ground, they saw a huge monster that resembled a giant centipede. Of course, they don't want to let anyone give this creature away, and they're going to fight it themselves and literally rob the other guys. A couple of guys were already puffing on him, but it looks like their attempts were not crowned with success. The girl with curls in her hair wants to take it for herself first and prepares her machine gun for battle. She thought she could take him down with special bullets. But our hero knows that this is an advanced level C beast, or in other words, a biochemical locust, and a high level of strength is required. Our hero watched the fight closely, and it seemed to him that the scales were like cotton wool in front of the barrel of this little girl. He highly doubts that thermal weapons can cause any damage to animals. But as it turns out, it's a little unusual. As far as Yun knows, the bullets have a penetrating effect. If they constantly hit the same place, then such armor will fly into pieces. One such bullet costs more than 100. And apart from these large corporations, it is unlikely that any ordinary student will be able to afford it. When Luo heard the price, his eyes almost popped out of his head. According to Fair, there are very few people who use thermal weapons, but this does not mean that they do not exist, and it poses a very big threat to warriors. However, it's not all that bad. There's no need to rush, because it was created to fight warriors, and it simply doesn't have enough power to kill the beast. And really, no matter how hard this girl tries, she can't do anything. Tornadoes have started to form around us, and they are becoming more and more difficult to deal with. But she is apparently very stubborn and is not going to give up just like that. And only at this moment does she realize that she should have taken George with her. And our hero and his assistant found the perfect moment to attack. And the shooter now wants to use his next plan and presses a special button on his weapon. At this time, the guys were already heading straight towards her. Yun released several of her blades at once, and it was quite fast. Her speed was incredibly impressive. However, the beast managed to repel some of the targets while the rest were able to cut through his armor, and he stared at his enemy. In order to avoid another blow, the toothy one began to dig up the ground beneath him. The girl doesn't want to let him just leave, so she jumps high above him, and our hero can only watch what happens next. She had to use one of her trump cards, and the guy realized that it was some kind of ancient technique. She was able to strike the creature, and it seemed she managed to cut off its head. And indeed, when the clouds cleared, she saw the motionless body of this centipede. But it was too early to rejoice. It seemed that this blow was not fatal, and Luo rushed forward towards him. The beast had already begun to rise upward, and in order to do so faster, he had to use wind steps. He was able to climb onto it very skillfully and get his sword. Now Luo knows how to end all of this. He found a weak spot on his back and ran the blade over it again. He managed to cut it in half and jumped aside. The guy signaled to the others that he was now weakened and gave the freedom to strike, which the young girl took advantage of by using a heat-seeking missile. It looks like this time they really did it. But now, they are faced with an interesting task. How will they divide the materials among themselves? The system described that the condition of the corpse could be assessed at 60 points, and the price was about 2.1 million. The green-haired girl came closer to the guys and said that this biochemical locust was found by them. However, they did them a favor and helped kill her, so they should split everything in half. Of course, everyone was not against it and agreed to such conditions. The guys decided to get to know each other better. The girl introduced herself as Jin Xiaoqiao, and Luo and Yun also told about themselves. Other guys have already discovered a precious stone that was lying on the earth. It is a real treasure. It was immediately clear that this was the locust blood crystal. And our hero knows very well that it is very expensive. The total price is approximately 6 million. The girls began to agree among themselves how they would divide it all up. Yunfei liked everything very much. However, she would like to buy this piece of biochemical locust glutton blood crystal and pay compensation according to the market value. The girl's allies were a little hesitant and waited for her answer, but it seems like she didn't mind, because it doesn't matter. For her, this piece of crystal is useless. She also promised to give her guys a little more in the upcoming division, which they were very happy about. But of course, on the condition that they keep the incident a secret and don't tell George, the boys agreed to keep their mouths shut. Yun looked at her phone. Last time she bought herself armor, and now she is $500,000 short and she doesn't know what to do now. Having heard about this, our hero decided to share the money with her. He just has that amount, and he is ready to give it to her. The girl just smiled in response. She doesn't often do favors for anyone, but she promises to return him double the amount. But the boy doesn't see the need for this after all. They are just odnoklasniki, and there is no need to be so polite. The guys made a deal with Jin. She also said that if they needed anything else, they could easily contact her. Suddenly, she looked at her watch and noticed that they had already left. And if they didn't manage to return and George caught her, they would put her in jail again. She ran as fast as she could. The guys just watched from the side. When the atmosphere around became a little quieter, Yoon asked if he would go to the store with her, or if he had some other plans. Our hero said that he wanted to walk a little. The girl was not against it. She wants to find a teacher and ask him to protect her. She really hopes that she can absorb the crystal and become a warrior of level A. Soon it was night. The boy went into a small forest and decided to pitch his tent there. He still couldn't sleep, and he was choosing the armor he wanted to buy. And he found one that seemed good in flying. However, unfortunately, he is currently short of money. He needs to earn another 5 million while he is on the expedition team. He felt a little stuffy, and he decided to get some fresh air and go out of the tent. But he didn't notice how he was already being watched. This is the same one from Song's team. This guy doesn't give him any peace. The man sat comfortably on the roof of a tall building and watched through binoculars. In addition, his colleague was also connected to this work, and they were already impatient to strike, because they had been watching him for more than a few days. Everyone understands his impatience, but this time we need to be especially careful and attentive. The thing is, this guy's status is at the highest level, and he also has a shadow sword that is stronger than that of ordinary B-level warriors. It is very easy to hurt him, but if you try to kill him, he can lose his temper and do many things. That is why it is very important to remain patient now and wait until he weakens. But one of them is worried that several days have already passed. If they continue to delay, he will meet with other team members and teachers and there will be no more chance. And that is why he has some idea that he wants to voice. All the guys looked at him carefully, and he suggested contacting his uncle. It's quite possible that he's also on a mission in this city. Their commander turned to him and asked why he hadn't told him about this before, since his uncle's abilities were not inferior to the strongest of them, and then everything would go like clockwork. And since all the guys are okay with it, he's going to contact him right now and find out his level of interest. About the same 5 days passed, nothing special happened. Our hero continued to fight with the animals. This time he came across a cheetah-like creature, a very aggressive one. The blonde swung his sword deftly. It had already become much easier for him to fight them. He jumped away from the column a little further. Pushing off the ground, he attacked him from above. A few seconds later, the animal was already lying on the ground without strength or signs of life. He managed to overcome the threshold of 100 beasts, and also, he was able to break through to an ordinary warrior of the A level. This motivates him a lot and makes him happy. The motivation to fight appears with every victory. Now he has about 1400% speed at his disposal. If you take into account the hidden genetic power, it has definitely become much greater. And if these strengthening effects break out, he can even fight with the highest warriors. Suddenly, he feels a blade flying towards him. Someone dared to attack him from behind, but the blonde managed to turn his head to the side in time. He had to jump a little further away from the beast, which he had not yet examined. It was a terrifying, sneaky attack. They just wanted to deal him the most fatal blow at the moment he least expected it. Silhouettes of people began to appear in front of him, coming closer and closer. They really expected that it would be fatal damage, but he was able to dodge. It was Song's gang. Our hero immediately recognized the man from the martial arts of the Bloody Blade. The man praised him for his good memory, but reminded him that they also had an old unresolved dispute. And it was high time, as it seemed to him, to settle everything right now. And it seems that they don't care at all that there is at least one teacher and students nearby. He just needs to send a message and they will arrive here soon. One of them said that he was not against it. He was interested in whether they would come or not. How unlucky he is now, there is no signal in this room. And the blind man in one eye began to pester him, demanding that he give him the elixir of rebirth. They surrounded him on all sides to make sure he didn't escape. The guys looked at him and smiled. They know perfectly well that he definitely has several million in his wallet. The blind man continued to tease him, revealing all the information he knew about him. The bald man took out his blade and also muttered something under his breath. The boy began to visually assess the situation. Scar still remembers him, and especially the time when he stood up for Song Jae. And if he doesn't kill him right now, then these troubles and knives in the back will never end. And that's why Luo took out his sword. The leader only found it funny that he was still continuing to fight when death was near. The boy decided to strike him first, but the man skillfully blocked it with his knife. And only at that moment he realized what incredible and powerful strength this boy had. Just one blocking blow was able to knock him to the ground. One of his friends grabbed Scar by the collar and pulled him aside. He shouted at everyone else to stay away from him. Seeing what had happened, everyone began to watch his movements more closely. Our hero wanted to cut off the head of one of them with a powerful swing of his sword. However, unfortunately, he was able to evade the attack. The wave from the blade headed towards Chunglei and managed to cut through his neck. The guys started to worry about him, but now it was time to fight. Since they had already started, the bald one had moved forward and was going to attack. He pulled one black glove onto his hand and looked angrily at our hero. Nobody understood what happened, but some sparks started coming from him. He threw something at the young guy. The throw was so powerful that it was able to break through the wall of the building. It was pretty mean. Luo somehow managed to block and protect himself. It didn't really affect him at all, other than him crashing into a wall. For him, this is something new, some kind of powerful weapon. As soon as he opened his eyes looking up, he saw some kind of arrow flying towards him. There was no time to count the crows. The blonde managed to move to the side so that it wouldn't hit him directly. The bald man watched from the side, and now he couldn't see anything because of the thick layer of smoke. He waited for it to clear. It seems that our hero managed to escape, but they wanted to finish what they started, and so they declared a pursuit. Our hero understands perfectly well that he has very little chance against two people, and therefore he needs to retreat for a while and come up with a much more effective strategy. The first thing that came to his mind was that Scar had most likely brought something that was jamming the signal. He was able to pick up speed and reach the forest, but this vile man was already waiting for him here and continued to tease him. Of course, Luo is not a cowardly student. He is not going to run and hide, but went straight to his enemy. The blind man found it funny that they were going to kill him, except in his dreams it seemed to him. Full of confidence, Scar walked towards Luo and was about to attack with a knife. The boys grappled again. this time so hard that all the trees shook, and some even broke over a fairly large radius. Only now did Scar feel that some simple warrior was able to surpass him in strength, and he became very curious about how he was able to rise in such a short time. The blonde began to slowly approach him, and his knees were already starting to shake. Luo had no intention of responding to his request to recover, and so he made a sharp swing with his blade. This time his enemy had no intention of repelling the attack and received a strong cut along his chest. He shouted to everyone that they needed to get out of here. Now he begins to understand that he cannot cope with such force. The man still kept remembering Wang Hong as he ran away from the boy. The blonde looked after him. How ugly it was. They were leaving him without permission. It seems like to make him more docile, I should use single slash on him again. The blind man in one eye turned and looked back in horror. He managed to get his sword out, but it was useless. Such a strong wave broke it into two parts. And this could not stop him in any way. His body was pierced through and through. He looks at the damaged site and can't believe how this could have happened. His legs become heavy and he falls to his knees. The blonde came closer to him and now he just wants to take what's his. The guy took the sword out of his chest and hid it, then sat down next to him on the green lawn. After such a battle, he should have taken some A-level recovery stones. They cost tens of thousands, but it was worth it. The effect of them was strong. After which he approached Scar and began to examine him carefully. He remembered how this man took out a dagger out of nowhere. Perhaps he has a spatial ring? And indeed, he was not mistaken. Luo took off his glove and found it on his finger. Besides this, he had other treasures at his disposal. The head of the Iron Tiger interested him the most. After examining his inventory, you need to run away, because this scoundrel managed to send a message, and Wang Hong should appear here soon. It will be very difficult to deal with him. A couple of minutes later, he arrived at the scene and found himself right next to his comrade's body. Having seen this nightmare with his own eyes, he became interested in who dared to do this. Besides, all his things were taken. But he finds it very hard to believe that this particular boy could have done it. The bald man began to look around and noticed an inscription on a tree that threatened him with violence. After that, he realized that this was Luo's doing, and he simply gritted his teeth. To him, Scar is just trash now. He can't believe he let himself be killed by such a small warrior. Meanwhile, it was already getting dark outside, and the boy arrived at the appointed place. Yunfire met him and asked where he had been. All his clothes were shabby, in a terrible state. He must have achieved great success. Our hero justified himself by saying that he forgot to take spare clothes when he left. Teacher Han didn't pay much attention to this. There's a first time for everything, and he immediately remembers his very first assignment, where everything was much worse. The girl decided to joke a little and said that she was ready to share her clothes. However, they were, to put it mildly, girlish. The teacher began to laugh loudly at her attempts to flirt with our hero, and he himself had already found a spare combat uniform. He had to go around the corner and change his clothes in peace. Outside, Yun was already waiting for him along with his fat friend. Surprisingly, this shape is very comfortable for him and fits him perfectly. It was noticeable that he had changed. Even Yun noticed this. The blonde began to rub the back of his head and said that 2 days ago he was able to become an A-rank warrior. She was very happy for her friend and praised him for a job well done. Their pleasant conversation was interrupted by the teacher. It was time to move out and meet the main forces, but he was worried about where the other guys were. As soon as they mentioned them, they already started to appear from over the horizon. Jiajia and her boyfriend run up to them. They apologize for being late because they were killing an A-rank beast. For the teacher, this sounded a little surprising, since their level was slightly lower. Shimin began to boast that this was just a warm-up for him, proudly raising his nose. His girlfriend also praised him and said that he had not slept for several days and had killed more than 300 animals. But it seems that no one really cares. No one reacted to it in any way. Even though she played along with him, she doesn't understand what he wants to say. Why pretend that he can do everything? And only now the girl begins to understand that he doesn't deserve her. Luo Li can't compare with him. Wiping his nose, the guy asked why his so-called rival was silent. Our hero looked at him and didn't answer. Yun decided to speak instead. She said that together with him she was able to deal with a high-level beast. It seemed that this was quite a strong blow to his pride. He wanted to object to something, but the girl crossed her arms over her chest and sincerely said that she was telling the truth. The one who restrains the team should know his place. Meanwhile, Jiajia looked away. She didn't understand why Fire stood up for the loser Luo. It seemed that he somehow managed to establish a connection with their family. The long-haired girl turned to Shimin and asked why he was demanding something else. Midan, and our hero is still haunted by their conversation about money. She just winked at him and still promised to return everything with interest. She doesn't like asking for money. After these conversations, she literally disappeared somewhere in a second. This girl is really quite interesting. Our hero asked if she was always like this. Teacher Han just laughed and said that she only showed her true colors to those close to her. He winked at our hero and said that she was most likely very interested in him. Soon the guys came to the parking lot and split into pairs, while our hero stood separately from everyone else. Suddenly, someone closed his eyes and he heard a familiar voice. This is Shin. She is very happy to see him and hugged him. Her jokes with a hint of jealousy never ended. Now she accuses him of daring to flirt with others. The blonde scratched the back of his head and said that he wouldn't dare to do that, because all his thoughts were immersed only in her. The girl blushed from such pleasant words and decided to ask how things were going with the animals. As soon as he was about to answer, she interrupted him and said that she had managed to deal with as many as 40 of them. The boy is truly delighted with her results. She has achieved more than Shimon. The boys started to giggle sweetly and already started making plans for the future. Others seem to always find it interesting to watch them from the sidelines. Besides this, the girl has something else to brag about. She was able to become a rank A warrior. Her genetic power increased by as much as 1,000%. Hearing about this, our hero's eyes almost popped out of his head. But their pleasant conversation was interrupted by Jia. She really missed her friend. This time the blonde outdid herself, started talking loudly and pushing. It felt like she was doing it on purpose and was trying to take his girlfriend away from him now, enticing him with conversations. It was hard not to notice how she looked at our hero with her Kasim gaze. Shin tells her that she is doing well and also tells her about her rank increase. At that moment, the blonde was overcome with envy. She couldn't believe that she did it faster than her. Tucking her hair behind her ears, Jia explained that she was delayed for some reason and pretended that she had no plans to level up just yet. She kindly allowed her friend to turn to her for help and advice with a slight smile on her face. The girl stepped aside to let her show off her new skills. Shin began to wave her hand and concentrated on one point above. With one sharp swing, she was able to release a huge arrow. Her friend stood in shock and couldn't believe how this was all possible. She was the first to create the flame. She even began to suspect that she might have become a supreme warrior, although even a warrior god couldn't do that in such a short time. She looked down, and Shin asked how she was. The blonde tried to pretend that she was very happy for her, but asked where this flame came from. As it turned out, it was all because of the blood crystal that Luo gave her. It didn't work until she raised her rank. Having heard about this stone, Jia asked again if she had understood everything correctly. Her friend just nodded her head and said that it was thanks to him that she was able to improve her powers so much. And when the blonde heard that it belonged to the fiery mutating Monkey King, she seemed to be stuck. The girl began to clench her fists out of anger. She cannot believe that he just gave her to his friend, and begins to regret it. If they had not broken up, she would have been able to get him with ease. And now she wants to start dating him again. Suddenly, Shin noticed that something was wrong, but to hide it, her friend turned away and said that she was just very tired and wanted to rest. Meanwhile, Song's allies were holding a small meeting. The leader gathered them all together and first asked Wang Hong where he had been. He did not hide the fact that all this time he was earning easy money. The man said that a master-level beast would be here in the coming days, and so he really didn't need any incidents right now. The bald man asked him not to worry because it was just an ordinary warrior. He dealt with him. The leader was not against this and asked how you were feeling about the situation outside. They reported that nothing had changed in the last week, and it was quite possible that the animal was killed by students. A guy from his gang was sitting on the roof and carefully examining the area. He managed to find out that other people were also interested in him and called everyone to come closer. The university students were worried about the current situation, but the teachers, for the most part, were not worried. But on the contrary, were already looking forward to this battle. Shimin, as always, was walking with his girlfriend, and she decided to ask the teacher where this long-awaited beast was. The man was having a snack. He said that he couldn't be seen from here, he had to walk some distance. Hearing about this, our hero asked why they were there then. The man answered him clearly that they were on a mission now. When the battle began, he would take care of everyone who would be nearby during the day. They had to control those who wanted to take advantage of the situation. Now it became clear that they were just standing guard. What a pity, because Shimon really wanted to show off his powerful skills. Yunfei smiled and advised him to go to the main group since he wanted it so much. The blonde laughed. But it turned out he thought that in principle everything suited him. The teacher instructed the couple to go down and keep an eye on the surrounding area in such a case, and if anything happens, be sure to report it. He told the other guys to go to the supermarket, and he himself went to Bida Plaza. As always, his favorite way to move is jumping from rooftops. Jiajia. When she saw this, she was horrified. She could not believe that he could survive from such a height. However, he activated his power and now he can fly calmly. Her boyfriend was also delighted. He wants to ask his father to buy it for him. The guys started discussing her and hugging. Our hero just sighed heavily and set off on the road with Yoon Fire. Of course, everything will not be just like that. The girl activated a special circle under herself. Unexpectedly for our hero, she took his hand and flew away. The guy didn't like that she did it so abruptly, but now he definitely won't be able to let her go. It's all because they are already hanging over the city. They are quite high. Seeing his expression, Yoon laughed and advised him to hold on. If he fell, no one would be able to save him. Our hero hugged her and grabbed her tightly enough. After some time, they already arrived at their destination. And now he can finally loosen his grip. She flies. Just amazingly. However, he was still afraid to get such an experience. The girl was unhappy that he had grabbed her so roughly, and she gently scolded him for it. The blonde looked away and began to justify himself by saying that he didn't know that she had flying armor. And now he was wondering why she didn't use it when they killed the high-level beast. However, she cannot use it just whenever she wants. The boys were already beginning to hear the sounds of battle. It looked like the fight had begun. Our hero was the first to start climbing down from the roof. He became interested in watching this. When he saw the three-headed jade crystal beast, he was very surprised. It was the first time he saw something like this. He is incredibly huge in size. The article says that any experienced warrior can defeat him. He can also release magic, making it difficult to fight. Suddenly, a very strange feeling appeared in Luo's body in the table. He already saw the guys who were fighting together to defeat him. Even Teacher Han was there this time. He skillfully swung his favorite blade right at the creature's face. However, it feels like this is still not enough. And our hero felt it. It seems that the article in which all the data about him was written greatly underestimated him. Right now, there is real hell going on around here. Everyone who was here was given the order to retreat immediately. To save himself, the teacher had to jump out the window and hide somewhere there. But as soon as he turned back, he already noticed that one of the lizard's heads had spotted him. Soon he crashed into that very window of the building. The boys watched everything from the sidelines and began to worry a lot about the teacher. It looked like Hana was thrown into the adjacent wall. Shin was the first to panic. She saw how the mentor was hit. Soon there was another roar as the beast attacked again. To everyone's great happiness, the teacher survived and, gaining speed, jumped high into the air. This time he decided to speed up, but the lizard swung its huge tail at him. The man is not going to retreat, and even already knows how to repel this attack. He created something like a dome of fire to both protect and damage him, and he succeeded. His tail was cut off. Our hero is very interested in watching the progress of this battle. He is interested in why Li Huai suddenly started winning. His partner decided to joke and asked him to call her sister, and only on this condition would she agree. Of course, the blonde felt awkward saying this, but he still agreed. In response, his new girlfriend just smiled. It was nice to deal with him. In fact, it's very simple. Animals have low intelligence, and therefore direct confrontations should be avoided. Even though their teacher was at a disadvantage at first, he was able to exhaust him. He was so angry that he spent a lot of energy all the time. Some guys even filmed this. They want to post it on social networks and get a lot of views. One of them simply began to admire Khan and really wanted to join his class. Suddenly, a strange man appeared behind him and said that he didn't have a single chance. Just as the boys wanted to turn around, their throats had already been cut, and they fell to the ground without signs of life. The man can't believe that all the groups are so eager to defeat this beast. He turned to his assistant, and he reported that all the sentries had been killed, but he had left only one to use against the teachers. Longhair gives him the order to act now and quickly. They must not be noticed by the teachers under any circumstances, otherwise there will be a lot of problems. In addition, he asked to tell the captain to set up an ambush here. They must clear the area after this beast is killed. Our hero looked at everything from the side together with his girlfriend and asked her what level she was at now. She didn't like this question. It's the same as asking age. If you think about it, she's doing everything right. She won't reveal her power to other people. However, even despite this, she decided to still share because she trusted him. As it turned out, she was an A-rank high-level warrior. Luo certainly didn't expect such an answer from her. He begins to admire her even more. This girl is truly a genius. The long-haired girl jokingly hinted to him that during this time he had made as many as 2 mistakes, asking about her level and guessing her age. He felt a little awkward and cleared his throat. Suddenly, the girl had a feeling that someone was here. The guys quickly jumped onto the roof. They had a view of the entire city and began to explore it. At first glance, it seems that there is no one here. The neighboring houses are empty. The guy looks at her with slight misunderstanding. Maybe she was nervous. As it turned out, this man was right below them, carefully watching them and gaining energy. Luo was able to notice him and can assume that he has surveillance skills and a high level of strength. As soon as everything calmed down, he would like to ask his girlfriend what she was going to do. However, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed that she was no longer here. One of the ill-wishers also found himself in a difficult situation. He was standing right under this building and could not find another sentry. He blamed it all on his tiredness. Maybe he was just very nervous today. And it was at this moment that Yun Feier appeared above him. The girl very quickly made her way to him and put a dagger under his throat, asking who he was. The man only told about himself that he was from the Raging Flame team. This impressed the young lady and she asked what they were doing there. The brunette began to make up excuses on the fly, saying that they were also interested in this beast. At this time, our hero had already found her and went down to her. The girl put on a slight smile and wondered where all the other guards were and how it turned out that they killed most of them, and the rest would die from high-ranking warriors. The boy realized that in this situation his friend Shin was in danger, and besides, the connection was being blocked again. He quickly found a photo of the green-eyed girl and nervously asks if he has seen her. The man shouted loudly that he did not kill her and asked her to spare him. Our hero is very worried about his friend and therefore wants to go and see. She turned to him and asked him to be on guard. This man was clearly not alone here. If the enemy found out, then this girl would definitely be in trouble. The man started to talk trash to her, and she started to threaten to kill everyone on their team. He was able to pull a knife out of his sleeve and found the right moment to attack. The enemy broke free from her hands and wanted to attack, but the girl managed to block. She managed to get her throwing weapon and wounded him in the neck, after which she needed to move away from him to a safe distance. Our hero now sincerely does not understand anything, and therefore is interested in what he needs to do. Yun suggests acting stealthily. After all, the enemy has several experienced warriors, and probably the positions of the teachers and Shin's sentries were not found. The first thing the boy wanted to do was tell Mr. Khan everything, but he greatly underestimates the enemy. They are already prepared for this. Suddenly, the girl heard the sounds of a walkie-talkie from the pocket of the guy she had beaten. She had to take a transmitter and, using a few tricks, create a similar voice. She said that everyone was killed. The man ordered to return because the beast was almost killed. We need to prepare for battle. She came up with an excuse that there were still a couple of sentries left and asked him to start without her, to which he agreed. Yun noticed how her friend became interested in this interesting ability to change his voice. She promised to teach him this someday, but she started to fool around in her own way, which made Luo a little uneasy. Longhair admitted that this skill is not very useful. In fact, the voice changer does the same thing, only it cannot make another person's voice. And it's a pity that there is still no signal or connection. Suddenly, she heard sounds from her radio. They were calling her. This is Bai Qin. She is very lucky. Yun Feier is worried. She asked what the situation is like there. As it turns out, he was attacked by people from the Raging Flames. They killed 3 students, some were able to run away and hide, and also removed 2 of their number, and now they are going to go to Mr. Han. Hearing about this, the girl asked him not to go there because there was a trap there. Our hero overheard their conversation and asked how his friend Sin was doing, if everything was okay with her. But unfortunately, the guy doesn't have the information. They got separated during the mission. The enemy, 2 strong warriors, was already approaching him, and the only thing he managed to say was that her location was in the northeast corner inside the Huayang Gymnasium. The guys agreed to split up. Yun wants to go to Bai Qin. Our hero didn't waste time and quickly climbed up the building. A view of the city opened up before him, and he jumped off at the right street and ran on. In order to get in unnoticed, he decided to use the ventilation. And just as he began to hear strange sounds, the blonde decided to check what was going on there. He carefully pushed back the lid and noticed the boys playing cards carefree. It is very interesting to watch this process from above. He sees all their cards. However, now is not the time for games and distractions. We need to get down to business. For literally a couple of seconds, he felt that there was danger nearby. Someone began to approach the guys. One swing of the weapon, and the first girl was already attacked. She didn't even notice how it happened. Her friend was very scared for her. The girl fell to the ground without signs of life. Now the next attack was directed towards the enemy. Shin, although a little confused, was going to deal with him. The man rushed forward and made a powerful swing with his blade. He managed to repel the attack, and it seemed to him that victory was already in his pocket. Just as he wants to attack, there is a small rumble. The enemy doesn't even notice how something sharp flew past him. This is the work of our hero. He arrived in time to protect his girlfriend and was able to throw the man into the wall. He rushed towards the attacker like lightning to teach him a good lesson. Luo managed to land the first blow on him, and he even started coughing. He was thrown into the wall. The boy did a good job. The girl turned to her friend and asked what had happened here. Why such a sharp reaction? No time to explain. He just asked her to leave here. A couple of minutes later, the guys arrived at the hostel. Finally, there is a more or less calm atmosphere now where they can discuss everything. It is very difficult for everyone to accept that they are being hunted and that they are being killed. But now, in our hero's opinion, the logical solution would be to wait for Yunfeier, because with her they are stronger. It is also important to send a message to Mr. Han. Suddenly, she appeared, along with Bai Qingyu. It was obvious that they were both exhausted and in terrible condition. The girl said that her friend was seriously wounded. He had lost his fighting abilities, but his life was not in danger. They managed to kill everyone from the raging flames that were hunting them, but others could come here at any moment, and Sam took out the potions and drank them to recover a little. When she leaned against the wall, she felt the forces leaving her. Our hero began to worry about her. It seemed that she was also injured. It was hard for the girl to even speak, and even in such a situation she decided to continue joking. She really likes it when people call her sister, but nothing else. She took out another bottle of drink and is about to drink it now. It seemed that Luo had already guessed what it was, and only looked at her with a slightly displeased expression. With trembling hands, I somehow managed to open the bottle and drink a drop, and she herself tries to somehow heal her wounds, applying bandages with a special ointment. Everything began to disappear right before our hero's eyes. Her suit returned to its shape. Just like her, the girl can now speak freely. She is fine, and decided to share that she has a unique medicinal liquor in her calabash, which is more effective than a simple potion. She offered our hero a little drink. At first he resisted, as he was worried about the school rule, but then he finally decided to agree to try. Yun laughed slightly. Well, how could it be otherwise in such a tense situation? Our hero looked at this beautiful bottle, and then began to drink it slowly. But for some reason, he started coughing a lot, and after a while he felt a very good effect. It was noticeable that it was definitely not cheap. After he tried it, he threw it back to its owner, saying that he couldn't drink it. Even in such an exhausted state, she was able to catch him, of course. Their situation now is sad. However, she sees only one way out. Hearing about this, the guys gathered around her, asking which one exactly. The girl asked Shin to take Bai Qin with her and go to the other watchmen. It would be much better if the guys gathered, and then they could fight the Raging Flame team. And where they are, only Bai knows. It seems that in such a situation, this is the only good way out. She doesn't intend to just sit with Luo either. Since the two of them are the strongest here, they want to go and tell the teachers everything. However, it is also worth noting that there are 2 expert warriors near Mr. Khan, and this should be too dangerous. It seemed like she already had an idea. Yun looked at our hero with curiosity. Now it all depends on his answer. Whether he is ready to play big, they had to go to some place that looked a lot like a computer lab. Our hero still doesn't understand what her good plan is. And yes, this time she really wants to play big. Everything is in full swing. The girl carefully looks out the window to check that they are really alone here. And the guy has a question. What if they have stronger warriors? They won't go straight into their trap. All that remains, according to her, is to rely on luck. Han Lihui is going to kill the beast tomorrow. According to her, expert-level warriors are observing the situation and waiting to take the loot, and they will definitely not stay here. But now the blonde has another question in his head. Why is his girlfriend so sure that she can kill the commander? Obviously, because he does everything in the same style. He is a very mysterious and intelligent person, but definitely not strong. One can say that he is the brain of the Raging Flame. And then she became quiet, because she heard someone's footsteps. The guy pressed himself against the wall like she did, and they began to listen to the smallest sounds. Our hero managed to very quietly sneak up to the window and carefully look out with one eye. He saw 3 men standing near a tree and chatting about something. The guys know that there are about 5 people in the headquarters right now, and they are all high warriors. And this does not include those in the building. We need to wait a little more. So about 5 hours passed. Explosions were heard outside the window. Luo dared to guess that Mr. Han and the students had finished. She looked out the window again and said that now would be a good chance. She could clearly see that they had come out to unite with other warriors. That was it. The boys carefully climbed outside to quietly follow them. It's very good that they can sneak silently and observe the situation. Behind a small screen, they are sure that those who stand there are exactly those they need. These bad guys were holed up in one of the rooms. The vice captain was there too. His subordinates were reporting the situation to him and said that they were confidently moving towards success thanks to him. The girl and our hero looked out from the so-called ambush and listened attentively. Baldy praised his captain. He was like Zhuge Liang during the Three Kingdoms period. He deceived everyone. They found it funny that the students didn't even suspect their plan. One of them, who is the youngest, could not believe that he would be so lucky on the way here. He met a dying beast of the master level, and the students were busy with him, since they overestimate their strength. This plays into the hands of the enemies. They also received orders to kill all sentries without any exceptions. The boy listened to all this and could not believe that the people of the Raging Flame were so cruel. There was no information about them, but they were talking about killing them all as if that was how it should be. The vice captain himself only laughed in response. He thought he was being flattered. Soon after their pleasant conversation, his subordinates went their separate ways. Our hero looked out and immediately realized that this was their perfect opportunity. As soon as he had time to think, Yun burst into his room with a loud scream. The girl took out her katana and was about to attack him to put an end to this whole nightmare. Suddenly, he grabs her hand tightly and squeezes it hard. The girl didn't expect this and simply froze in place. It was very cruel of him, but he crunched it as if it had broken. She felt a lot of pain and screamed. The girl wondered who was standing in front of her now. Only at this moment does our hero realize that it is Wang Hong. The bald man runs up to the girl and hits her hard. She flew into the wall and can barely get up now. Soon, other members of his team arrived and began to laugh loudly at this spectacle. Their leader himself greeted Yun Feier. They really hadn't seen each other for a long time. She hit her back hard and still tries to somehow get to her feet. The man nodded his head and just laughed. He didn't think that she would fall into his trap, and he had been waiting for her for so long. Madame raised her head and looked him straight in the eyes, and she became interested in how he knew that she would definitely come here. As it turned out, he acted cunningly and caught several students to interrogate them. And since the teachers are busy killing the beast, the same fate awaits them. Since her friend Bai Qin was seriously injured, it seemed like she was the only one who could have come here. This man knows Yun very well and he didn't even have to look for her. His intelligence is amazing. And it was for this reason that he asked one man to dress up as him and just wait. And now, her not-so-pleasant acquaintance decided to remind her of the suffering she went through. It's really unpleasant to remember. Her team was destroyed because of Han Wentao. Her partners sacrificed themselves to save her. She will definitely never forget this. The man walked up to her and grabbed her by the chin. He ordered his guys to kill her. Everyone started to slowly approach her and laugh. No one wants to deal with her family. Suddenly, something crashes into the wall right next to them, distracting their attention. For some reason, everyone became very nervous when they realized what was going on. Luo Li came to his friend's aid, and just in time, the bald man recognized him immediately and didn't expect him to be here. But since he's here, he must have a lot of courage. The man immediately rushed to attack our hero. He was already prepared for this and dodged his attack. A huge stone fist appeared from under the ground and was able to throw the defender up. But it seemed that this did not frighten him at all. He was able to throw his blade straight at him. Baldy put up a barrier. I hope it will help him. But it looks very much like it was just a distraction until Luo himself came down to him. The two of them clashed, each wanting to show off their strength, but it seemed that the younger generation was stronger. And finally, the boy triumphantly jumps to the ground, throwing his opponent into the wall. At that very second, in order not to waste time, he grabs their commander, ordering him to order the others not to move. He shuddered from such fear and did as he was told, demanding that everyone stop. The members of his gang stand rooted to the spot, obediently following orders. But then another player appeared, their captain. Yun Feier knows this person very well, it's Du Chung. But she doesn't understand why the others are surprised, because they have an expert warrior on their team. But Han Wentao is still on them. Our hero was a little angry with her because she didn't tell him this earlier. Because if he had been serious with her, then all that would have been left of him would have been a study. But it turned out that the girl herself did not know. She thought that this Du Chung was hiding an ambush on the front lines. The man asked him not to be so aggressive because they only needed money, nothing more, and therefore he was ready to let them go right now.